Chapter 950. Tian Ningning, I'm in the royal capital. I'll handle the work at hand for the next few days and visit your home within a week. Tian Ningning, the star web storm is over, and I didn't do much. Tian Ningning, but I want to know how you offended Lin Yuan, what is his identity, and how did you get attacked by so many faction disciples? Tian Ningning said this with a very serious expression. As Black's exclusive reporter, she had to know about this. Tian Ningning couldn't guarantee that something similar would not happen again. If something similar happened again, she had to understand the situation in advance to be able to face and deal with it effectively. Otherwise, if something like this happened again, Tian Ningning would still be blinded and wouldn't know what to do. Upon hearing Tian Ningning's words, Lin Yuan thought for a moment and felt that it was a little troublesome to explain such things to her on Star Web. The best solution was to say it face to face. Thus, Lin Yuan replied. Black, you'll know when you come. Black, I have a lot of things to do recently, so I don't plan to log into my Star Web account. If there's anything, you can call me directly. After saying that, Lin Yuan sent his phone number to Tian Ningning. After sending the message to Tian Ningning, Lin Yuan immediately clicked on Chime's live streaming room. It had to be said that this was Lin Yuan's first time watching a live streaming on Star Web and Chime's live streaming room. Looking at the crazy gifts, bullet comments, and number of viewers in the live streaming room, Lin Yuan swallowed his saliva. Knowing how beautiful Chime's singing was, Lin Yuan had long foreseen that Chime would definitely become popular on Star Web. However, he didn't expect Chime to be so popular now. Looking at the gifts in Chime's live streaming room, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that the amount in the surprise box that Chime had given him was probably more than his purchase with no Law Store's income. Although the majority of the gifts in Chime's live streaming room came from the top 10 fans, the majority of Chime's income did not just come from these 10 viewers. The real majority of Chime's income was the tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of live streaming viewers. Even if each of them gifted $1 Radiance, it would add up to hundreds of millions of Radiance dollars. Lin Yuan looked at Chime's fan ranking and found that nearly 200 million users had rewarded Chime. Although many of the viewers at the bottom of the fan rankings were tipped in Federation dollars, there were also quite a number of viewers who tipped in Radiance dollars. Lin Yuan estimated that Chime's income of billions of Radiance dollars from live streaming was definitely unstoppable. Maybe even more. At that moment, he suddenly regretted saying that he would let Chime freely decide how to use the Radiance dollars earned in the live streaming room. Chime was still singing in the live streaming room. Delicate, seductive in the mud. Decadent in the third month of the season. The most tender new leaves didn't even bother withering. There was no need to part forever. Between the smooth pebbles, there was a reborn fire seed. Time is only an inch, it extends the withered glory. Under the dripping grass eaves, who bumps into the old lantern by the window? Polished, a hasty reunion. At the end of the green duckweed, the wind and dew danced even more. I thought that this moment coincided with karma. As Chime sang, it calculated the divine movement Bodhi fruit's time. Chime had finally turned into a human form for a live streaming, and it didn't want to suddenly turn into a bird during the live streaming. When singing this song, Chime opened up its dusty memories. Back then, it was covered in dirty feathers, lying in a small box, trembling with hunger, and it didn't even have the strength to chirp. The sound birds in the box with it all had usnea leaves to eat, but whenever it wanted to peck at the usnea leaves, it would always be ruthlessly pushed away. Then, it heard the person who sold it curse. Sound birds that fail to evolve into songstress birds shouldn't waste usnea leaves. Day after day, Chime became weaker. Originally, every time someone opened the box, Chime would try its best to raise its head and flap its wings, trying its best to show itself so that it could be sold. Chime didn't know how to sing and had failed to evolve into a songstress bird. Even if it couldn't eat the usnea leaves, it didn't want to be a useless chicken. However, the sound birds around it changed batches after batches, and it was the only one left. Every time it raised its head and flapped its wings, it would either receive disdainful gazes or be ignored. Slowly, Chime got used to curling its body tightly in the corner of the box, covering its head with feathers like an ostrich. Back then, Chimey felt that it might really be trash that no one wanted. Until one day, a pair of hands that still appeared cold even in Redbud City's hot and stuffy environment carried it out of the box. Chimey secretly opened its wings and carefully extended its head out of the wings. It saw a thin and weak youth smiling brightly, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. The youth's smile was like the light after the rain in Redbud City, illuminating Chimey's heart. At the same time, Chimey also noticed that the youth was carrying a dirty gray kitten. After returning home, the youth used water to bathe himself and the gray kitten. During the bath, the youth would ask if it was cold from time to time. Then, every time he tested the water temperature, he would carefully add a little hot water to the basin. When adding hot water, the youth would extend his palm to block in front of it and the gray kitten, afraid that the hot flow would burn them. This was the first smear of gentleness that Chimey had ever experienced. Afterward, Chimey had a name, 8 usnea vines that were more delicious than usnea leaves, and obtained the first praise in its life. For half a year, it learned its first song under the youth's patient guidance. When it was with Lin Yuan, Chimey felt that it was the luckiest life form in the world. It was a life form that had been crushed into the soil since birth, but it finally had the chance to perch on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branch. Originally, when Lin Yuan allowed Chimey to freely decide how to earn money from the live streaming room, Chimey didn't know how to spend the money. But now, Chimey had made a decision. While looking at the frenzied comments in the live streaming room, Chimey said softly, "Everyone, be quiet. Everyone, please be quiet. I have something to say." Chimey felt that its words were filled with a magical power. After it said that, the live streaming room fell silent. At that moment, Chimey saw Genius scuttling onto its shoulder and whispering into its ear, "Genius, Chimey has already muted everyone. Chimey, Genius has already muted everyone. Chimey, if you have something to say, just say it." After hearing Genius words, Chimey immediately had an embarrassed expression and let out an awkward cough. Immediately after, it spoke while everyone was muted. The second was even more. End of this chapter. Chapter 951. I've been a star web live streamer for at most 8 months. I haven't live streamed much during this period. I've only live streamed once or twice a week, and I've been off for a few months. However, I've already earned a lot of Radiance dollars just from live streaming on Star Web. Although Chimey's Star Web live streaming room could no longer send bullet comments, its words still stunned everyone watching the live streaming. They did not understand why the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess was lamenting on Star Web for no reason. There was an old saying that the more one lamented, the more mistakes one made. One would only be good if they did not say it, especially for Star Web live streaming, which relied on people to reward them. If one had a special understanding of the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess words, it seemed that there was a hint of flaunting her wealth. Tonight, the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess had revealed her face and live-streamed made her the #1 beauty in Star Web. Would the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess, who had just become the #1 beauty, suddenly self-destruct and be hated by people the next day? However, as the live streaming room was set for everyone to carry on, the audience could not send bullet comments to vent their emotions. At that moment, everyone heard the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess continue to speak. I have never touched the Radiance dollars that I earned from live streaming. I've saved them all. After careful calculation, there are about 3 billion Radiance dollars. After saying that, Chimey seemed to be happy about its achievement and smiled brightly. However, it did not know that its words were equivalent to publicly flaunting its wealth in the live streaming room. Although the Star Web live streaming room could block all bullet comments, the live streaming content of a big live streaming host like the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess would be recorded and saved in the Star Web video library. At that moment, even some of the old fans of the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess in the live streaming room were dumbfounded by the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess's actions. If she was publicly flaunting her wealth and was confirmed, even if the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess had the strength, she would not be able to penetrate the Earth's core. If she lost her popularity in the future, it would be difficult for her to become popular. Just as everyone was wondering why the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess would self-destruct in the live streaming room, the elated sparrow-voiced lowly goddess smiled sweetly. I won't be able to finish spending these 3 billion radiance dollars no matter what, and I don't plan to spend them. I plan to use this 3 billion radiance dollars to set up a Warm Sun Fund. This Warm Sun Foundation is invested in every corner of the Radiance Federation to provide a suitable normal Fae for anyone who has the qualifications to become a Spirit Chi professional but doesn't have the ability to purchase a Fae. At the same time, the Warm Sun Foundation will also allocate 1/3 of the funds to save those Faes with innate defects and restore them to a healthy state. Let these Faes with innate defects have a chance to change their lives like Spirit Chi professionals. Alright, I'm done. After saying that, Chimey decisively hung up the live broadcast. At that moment, Chimey's live broadcast had only been going on for slightly more than an hour. Originally, Chimey could maintain its human form for nearly 4 hours using the divine form Bodhi fruit. It could be said that Chimey had gone offline too early. However, at that moment, Chimey threw a tantrum when it thought of Lin Yuan. It was unwilling to sing for the audience that had said bad things about Lin Yuan and Black. Chimey lowered its head and said softly to Genius. Smart, I'll leave the Nuanyang Fund to you. I'll be in charge of earning money, and you'll be in charge of spending the money. Genius swayed its 5 fluffy tails and said in a childish voice, Chimey, there won't be any problem with the allocation of funds on Star Web. Chimey, there won't be any problem with the allocation of funds that I helped you transfer on Star Web. I will do my best to plan according to the detailed situation of the major cities on Star Web. However, I will still need Lin Yuan's help for such things. We only have a plan. Without manpower, we won't be able to push this matter to every corner of the Radiance Federation. When Chimey heard Genius' words, it felt that this matter was very complicated. Chimey shook its head and decided not to think so much. Since Genius and Lin Yuan were around, there was no need for it to worry. At the same time, Chimey recalled Lin Yuan's warm sun-like smile when it first saw him. It was that smile that had illuminated Chimey's life. Chimey wanted to pass on this warm sun-like smile to every corner of the Radiance Federation. At the very least, it wanted to give those Spirit Chi professionals like Lin Yuan and Faes like Genius and Genius a chance to change. Chimey, which had been dormant in the dust for a long time, finally rose to the top, understood. Any opportunity in the dust could bring a warm sun-like power to the lifeforms in desperate situations. After Chimey turned off the live broadcast, the ban on everyone in the live streaming room was automatically lifted. At that moment, Chimey was hugging Genius and enjoying the last time it had with Genius. However, it didn't know how shocked the viewers in its live streaming room were. Blue wind and rain, heavens. The sparrow voice lowly goddess actually threw out over 3 billion radiance dollars that she earned from live streaming for charity. I want to ask which live streamer on Star Web can do this. Qin Yu Huang, the sparrow voice lowly goddess is actually helping those who can't afford Faes but have the aptitude. I might be able to afford Faes, but I still have to thank the sparrow voice lowly goddess for those who can't afford Faes. Follow heart, am I the only one who noticed the main point? The sparrow voice lowly goddess is not only helping those with the aptitude of Spirit Chi professionals, but she is also helping those Faes with innate defects. The sparrow voice lowly goddess is simply too warm and caring. Forget me, I don't have so much to say. I just want to say that the sparrow voice lowly goddess is the true warm sun. After this bullet screen was sent out, many people saw this bullet screen. They couldn't help but learn from Forget Me and posted in the bullet comment. Beating beams, the sparrow voice lowly goddess is the true warm sun. All the way to the end, the sparrow voice lowly goddess is the true warm sun. Soft rabbit baby, the sparrow voice lowly goddess is the true warm sun. The bullet comments formed a string of irresistible steel torrents that lingered in the sparrow voice lowly goddess live streaming room for a long time and refused to disperse. Looking at the bullet comments that blocked his vision, Lin Yuan couldn't help but give Chimey a thumbs up. Chimey had done something that Lin Yuan had always wanted to do but hadn't had the time to do. Lin Yuan felt that the little fellow that only knew how to chirp on his ear had grown up. As Chimey's contractor, Lin Yuan still needed to help implement and complete the Warm Sun Fund. Lin Yuan now had a huge network of connections and was no longer the immature youth. It was no longer difficult for Lin Yuan to implement the Warm Sun Fund. At that moment, Biyao was staring at the bullet comments in the live streaming room. He looked calm, but his heart was already blooming with emotions. When Biyao had first entered the live streaming room, he had fallen in love at first sight with the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess like a rainbow. Now, Biyao only had a bone-deep love for the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess. She had a voice, looks, and talent that he liked. At the same time, she had a kindness that moved him. As long as he met such a person, Biyao felt that he wouldn't be a man if he didn't grab hold of her. However, Biyao had no idea how to grab hold of this feeling at the moment. However, Biyao felt that he should have a brave plan to pursue his love. At that moment, Lin Yuan had already logged out of Star Web. After taking a shower, he entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone. He planned to take advantage of the night to explore the swamp world, which he had never set foot in, through Klein Hub. Chapter 952. After seeing the swamp dimensional rift, Lin Yuan was looking forward to the swamp world. Apart from the main world's Agapattern Federation and the Divine Wood Federation, the only other world that Lin Yuan could go to was the swamp world. The Divine Wood Federation and the Radiance Federation were both federations that existed in the main world, but they were very different. The three major federations on the Agapattern Federation had a large population, and there were constant conflicts and intrigues between them. In the Divine Wood Federation, Lin Yuan could operate and find ways to profit from the three major federations. However, if he endlessly mined the resources on the Agapattern Federation, it would be tantamount to touching the common interests of the Divine Wood Federation, the Iron Hammer Federation, and the Deep Lush Federation. He would immediately be counterattacked by the joint forces of the Divine Wood Federation, the Iron Hammer Federation, and the Deep Lush Federation. However, the swamp world was completely different. It was a vast world where only the swamp dimensional lifeforms lived. Lin Yuan could carry out uncontrolled mining and establish his base camp in a dimensional world like the swamp world. The most important thing to develop a dimensional world was to have strength. In terms of strength, Lin Yuan held the creation seed's power. Even if he did not dominate the swamp world, he would still be able to do so. Even if he did not dominate the swamp world, it would not be a problem for him to have a huge territory as a foothold. As soon as he entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan immediately thought of the Class 4 Medusa lizard locked in the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box. Lin Yuan hurriedly exited the Spirit Lock spatial zone and left the main residence. Looking at the very elegant courtyard arranged by Hu Quan, Lin Yuan contacted Blackie, who had been tormenting the angelfish of bliss in the hidden WIRM lake, in his spiritual spatial zone. Blackie immediately rose from the hidden WIRM lake and came in front of Lin Yuan. With a flip, he landed on Blackie's back and let it fly him toward the back of the mountain. After finding a place with no one, Lin Yuan jumped off Blackie's back and summoned the Medusa lizard locked in the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box. The Medusa lizard was locked in an iron cage made of platinum spiritual materials and had been struggling ever since it was locked in the cage. However, since the Class 4 Medusa lizard's strength was far from the iron cage's endurance limit, the shape of the iron cage did not change at all. On the other hand, the Medusa lizard was exhausted. It was lying in the cage and sticking out its tongue. Upon seeing Lin Yuan, the Medusa giant lizard immediately roared and pounced at him with its hind legs. However, due to the iron cage's obstruction, the Medusa giant lizard was unable to pounce on him. Instead, he had bumped into himself. Lin Yuan looked at the Medusa and realized that many faint red patterns had appeared on its originally purple scales. When he saw these red patterns, he knew that the Class 4 Medusa giant lizard had devoured those 4 Class 4 swamp crocodiles, and its grade had increased. When the Medusa monitor's body was covered with hideous red veins, the Medusa monitor would be able to expand in size and successfully advance to level 5. Lin Yuan was rather satisfied as he looked at the Medusa giant lizard, which was constantly roaring at him and deliberately attacking him even in the cage. The more ferocious and aggressive the Medusa lizard was, the more effective it would be when nurtured. Lin Yuan waved his hand, and the amber button-shaped source sand that was hanging on his sleeve landed on the ground. Then, a huge quicksand vortex appeared under the iron cage that contained the Medusa giant lizard, and 12 chain swords shot out of it. Each chain of 3 formed a group and firmly wrapped around the Medusa giant lizard's limbs. This caused the Medusa giant lizard to maintain a posture in the iron cage and find it difficult to move. The source sand was now only gold /fantasy 2. Even if it used the ferromanganese chain swords to control the Medusa giant lizard, it would not be enough. It would not be enough to completely control the Medusa giant lizard. Thanks to the Medusa giant lizard, it was already exhausted after struggling for several hours. Otherwise, if the Medusa giant lizard exerted a little force, it would break the ferromanganese chain swords. Lin Yuan took out a Medusa's eyeball in front of the Medusa giant lizard and crushed it before cutting his palm. He let the liquid in the Medusa's eyeball fuse with the blood in his palm. Lin Yuan realized that after his blood fused with the liquid in the Medusa's eyeball, it immediately turned into a blood-colored crystal. This blood-colored crystal was hard to the touch, no different from a stone. This must be related to the petrification ability in the Medusa's eyeball. At the same time, because the blood in the crystal was in a petrified state, it could preserve Lin Yuan's scent to the greatest extent. Then, Lin Yuan took out the Medusa demon's greenish-purple heart's blood and threw the blood-colored crystal into it. He felt the Medusa demon's heart's blood continuously corroding the crystal bottle in his hand. He threw the crystal bottle into the quicksand under his feet and let the sand wrap around the crystal bottle. Finally, a huge palm formed by sand emerged from the ground and struck the Medusa giant lizard's lower jaw. The Medusa giant lizard's lower jaw was attacked, and it opened its mouth in anger. At that moment, the palm formed by sand immediately threw the crystal bottle into the Medusa giant lizard's mouth. Then, a large amount of sand was split out from the palm and poured into the Medusa giant lizard's mouth. He had to ensure that the crystal bottle covered in sand could reach the Medusa lizard's stomach. He had done this because the Medusa monitor lizard's saliva contained toxins and would cause a severe bacterial infection after being bitten. On the other hand, it was because the giant Medusa lizard's mouth was too smelly. Even though he was now 5 meters away from the Medusa giant lizard, every time it roared, the Medusa giant lizard wouldn't be able to dodge. Lin Yuan could smell an unbearable aura. Lin Yuan was really afraid that if he walked within 1 meter of the Medusa monitor lizard, he would stumble due to the unpleasant smell. As for how the Medusa monitor lizard would feel after devouring a large amount of sand and crystal bottles, he did not need to consider it. With the Medusa lizard's powerful digestive ability, not to mention swallowing sand grains. Even if the ferromanganese was swallowed, the ferromanganese would be decomposed after being soaked in the stomach acid for a long time. The Medusa monitor lizard was caught off guard and became angrier after being forced to swallow a mouthful of sand. However, the Medusa monitor lizard soon calmed down. It had an intoxicated and immersed expression on its face as though it was savoring the taste in its stomach that it had to follow and obey. At that moment, the ferocity on the Medusa monitor lizard's face disappeared, and it was as obedient as a pug. However, in just a short while, the intoxicated and immersed expression on the Medusa monitor lizard's face disappeared, and it subconsciously roared. When the roaring Medusa monitor lizard smelled the bloody smell coming from Lin Yuan's palm wound, it hurriedly stopped roaring and lowered its raised head. The Medusa lizard quickly stopped crying and lowered its raised head. The first time was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 953. Even though the Medusa giant lizard did not show any intimacy toward Lin Yuan, it would not take the initiative to attack him now. Upon seeing this scene, Lin Yuan forcefully held his breath and walked to the front of the cage before repeating the previous steps. This time, when Lin Yuan tossed the crystal bottle up, the Medusa giant lizard raised its head and swallowed it. After the second induction, he realized that the Medusa giant lizard would subconsciously approach him. Her expression was filled with flattery and admiration, as if she had become a Medusa demon with a head full of snake hair in the eyes of the giant Medusa lizard. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan opened the cage and let the Medusa giant lizard climb out. At the same time, he secretly used spirit essence burst, and a thick layer of spirit chi covered his fist. As the spirit chi concentration in the spirit lock spatial zone increased, Lin Yuan's spirit essence burst attack became stronger. If the Medusa monitor lizard had the intention to hurt him, he would definitely punch it without mercy. However, Lin Yuan realized that the Medusa giant lizard, which had been lured twice, had already displayed the true colors of a professional bootlicker. He didn't dare to approach her abruptly and only dared to silently guard her from the side. He planned to induce the Medusa Monitor Lizard a third time to reach a permanent contract. At that moment, Morbius' voice echoed in the depths of his soul. Lin Yuan, dimensional lifeforms live in dimensional worlds. Spirit Qi is useless against them. However, Source-type power is an extremely precious treasure to dimensional creatures. The effect of Source-type power on dimensional lifeforms is far greater than pure Spirit Qi on phase. If Source power is added during the third induction, it might allow the Medusa Lizard to undergo an earth-shattering evolution. Dimensional creatures are also grateful for great opportunities. When the time comes, the Medusa Lizard will be even more loyal after forming a permanent contract. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. Then, Lin Yuan called out the princess, who had been digesting the Law Origin crystal without stopping for a moment. He asked the princess, "Princess, when you digest the Law Origin crystals, you can refine Law Origin crystals that contain pure energy. At the same time, you will also store the source energy in your body. Use this source energy to inject it into the complete rules and let the rules improve. I wonder if you can take this source energy out of your body." As a sacred source life form, the princess was highly intelligent. When she saw the Medusa Lizard in front of Lin Yuan like a pug, she knew what Lin Yuan was planning. However, she did not understand. What was the use of using such precious source-type power to enhance these lowly dimensional life forms? Each of the 28 crows hit by the jackdaw wither in the holy sword state could easily kill dozens of Medusa lizards of such strength. Thus, the princess sent a question to Lin Yuan in her soul. Lin Yuan sensed the princess' doubts and said, "Next, I plan on developing the swamp world, and nurturing a few swamp dimensional creatures that can carry out absolute control will help with the development of the swamp world." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's answer, the princess' eyes lit up. If he could develop in the swamp world, he would always have Law Origin crystals to eat even if he did not trade with others in the future. This was simply too good. After sensing the Medusa giant lizard situation, the princess said to Lin Yuan, "Don't worry. Master, dimensional creatures can only undergo a baptism of source-type powers once in their lives. They will awaken and evolve under the baptism of source-type powers. Dimensional creatures of any level can receive the baptism of source-type powers. There are no restrictions. However, the higher the level of dimensional creatures, the more source-type powers they need to undergo a perfect source baptism. Since this Medusa Monitor is at level 4, it needs 400 units of source power to undergo a perfect baptism of source power." Lin Yuan frowned. 400 portions of source energy? Didn't that mean that the Medusa Monitor Lizard would need 400 source crystals to undergo a perfect source baptism? Such consumption was an astronomical figure for Lin Yuan before he had the Golden Lotus Brocade seedling. Even if he had the Golden Lotus Brocade truss, he would still feel the pinch if he spent 400 portions of source-type power. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, the princess reached out her hand to press down the erecta hogue on her head. He said reluctantly, "Master, that's right. Of course, you can also perform an imperfect source baptism. This way, you can save a lot of source power. The Medusa Lizard will also evolve." Lin Yuan asked after hearing the princess's words. "How much source power does an imperfect source baptism require?" The princess replied immediately. For an imperfect source-type baptism, the owner can choose how much source-type power to use. It can be any value between 1 to 400 source-type power. However, a source-type life form can only undergo one source-type baptism in its lifetime. After undergoing an imperfect source-type baptism, it cannot undergo a perfect source-type baptism again. Upon hearing the princess' words, Lin Yuan pondered for a moment. In the end, he decided to give the Medusa Lizard a perfect source baptism. The 400 portions of source energy were spent, and it was just an experiment. He wanted to experiment how much a perfect source baptism would improve dimensional creatures. If this perfect source baptism did not meet his expectations, he would not use it on dimensional life forms in the future. "Princess, perform a perfect source baptism on the giant Medusa Lizard." I can also take a look at the improvement a perfect source baptism has on dimensional creatures. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the princess responded. Okay, master. I'll inject 400 portions of source power into the giant Medusa lizard's body. While speaking, the princess danced gently, and a handful of silk thread spread out from her skirt. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan threw the last portion of the concocted liquid into the giant Medusa lizard's mouth. After the giant Medusa lizard swallowed the last portion of the spirit liquid, the silk threads in the princess' skirt turned into sharp blades that stabbed into the giant Medusa lizard's body. At the same time, a turbid amber halo appeared on every silk thread and finally injected into the giant Medusa lizard's body through the princess' skirt. When the princess stabbed these silk threads into the giant Medusa lizard's body, Lin Yuan found that there were exactly 400 silk threads. Each silk thread was injecting a portion of source power into different parts of the giant Medusa lizard's body. After the princess pulled the silk threads out of the giant Medusa lizard's body, Lin Yuan immediately heard the giant Medusa lizard let out a loud roar. At that moment, the giant Medusa lizard's roar was quite different from its original roar. The second one was even louder. End of this chapter. Chapter 954. If the Medusa lizard's roar had carried a sense of ferocity and oppression, then the Medusa lizard's roar now carried a kind of majesty and tyranny. The Medusa lizard's roar now carried a kind of majesty and tyranny. Immediately after, the Medusa lizard's nearly 6-meter-long body suddenly swelled up. The fishy smell in the Medusa lizard's mouth became even stronger, causing Lin Yuan to hurriedly take a few steps back. Lin Yuan realized that as the Medusa lizard's body expanded, its tail, which originally took up half of its body length, was rapidly lengthening. Now, the length of its tail could already reach more than twice its body length. At the same time, 3 heads suddenly grew on the Medusa lizard's shoulders while it was roaring. These 3 heads grew rapidly and soon reached the same length and size as the Medusa lizard's original head. The 4 heads let out a loud roar, blowing up the sand particles formed by the source sand's shattered soil layer. The Medusa lizard's original bluish-purple scales had also turned into a mysterious and noble purple-black color. The purple-black scales were covered with black-gold patterns. These black-gold patterns wandered wantonly on the purple-black scales with an indescribable sense of blood. The Medusa lizard's limbs had become thicker in order to bear this huge body that was nearly 16 meters long, including the tail. At the same time, each finger on the lizard's claws could reach a meter long. The dark golden claws were sharp and dull, and the large sand particles between the claws were crushed into powder. An amber pattern appeared on the front body that held up the 4 heads. This pattern looked exactly like the Medusa lizard's current appearance. Lin Yuan did not find it strange at all about the Medusa lizard's changes and sudden increase in size. If there were no major changes after the perfect source baptism of 400 units of source power, then he would have suffered a huge loss. However, Lin Yuan had seen many dimensional life forms, but he had never seen any dimensional life form with such a totem. Furthermore, the color of this totem looked very similar to the amber color of the source power, and even the aura was exactly the same. Lin Yuan had asked Morbius, Genius, and Princess about this, but he did not get an answer from the 3 of them. The answer could only be found in the exploration of the swamp world. Looking at the Medusa lizard that had undergone the perfect source baptism, Lin Yuan realized that the Class 4 Medusa lizard should be more powerful than a Class 5 demon. Moreover, the 4-headed Medusa lizard had greater flexibility and could probably fight 4 Class 5 demons at the same time without being at a disadvantage. Demons were the most powerful existences among dimensional life forms of the same class. From the looks of it, the comprehensive strength of the Medusa lizard that had undergone the baptism of the source power should be equivalent to that of a level 6 Medusa lizard. But now that the Medusa lizard had been baptized by the perfect source power, no matter how he looked at it, it did not look like a Medusa lizard anymore. It was as if the Medusa monitor lizard had evolved into a source-type life form with the highest life level under the source-type baptism. At that moment, Lin Yuan realized that the Medusa giant lizard's eyes were shining with wisdom, and its roar had changed again. There were strange syllables in the roar, as if it was speaking a unique language. Translator of. Lu editor Lin of, lizard of. of, and, it, lizard, lizard of lizard, of, lizard of. Thus, Lin Yuan was unable to sense the Medusa lizard's thoughts. All of a sudden, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. He recalled that Genius had mentioned that there was a new and unique subject on Star Web called dimensional linguistics. For example, the special syllables produced by some high-grade demons could express special meanings. Another example was the Medusa snake demon's chanting. It could also send out special commands to control the Medusa lizard that was loyal to it. Genius was very interested in this subject and had been sorting out the syllables of the various dimensional lifeforms' cries on Star Web. It was trying to guess the specific meaning of the syllables. The Medusa lizard's cries were filled with a large number of obscure and complex syllables. Genius could completely connect with the Medusa lizard through the interconnection tail. It could sense the Medusa lizard's thoughts and understand the meaning of different syllables. It would let Genius master the language of the Medusa lizard or the swamp dimensional life form as soon as possible after the perfect baptism. The Medusa giant lizard had already walked in front of Lin Yuan and lay down obediently. The Medusa lizard originally wanted to turn its head and use its big head to nudge Lin Yuan, but it keenly sensed Lin Yuan's disdain for the smell in its mouth. The Medusa lizard hurriedly buried its 4 big heads in the quicksand under its feet. Soon, the Medusa lizard lifted its head in the quicksand again, and Lin Yuan realized that the Medusa lizard no longer had any unpleasant smell. The smell in the Medusa lizard's mouth should be related to the bacteria and toxins in its salivary glands. The Medusa lizard could now freely control the glands in its mouth to produce toxins. Upon seeing the Medusa lizard's big head wanting to come over but not daring to, Lin Yuan took the initiative to rub its head. Lin Yuan realized that the Medusa lizard's purplish-black skin was very resilient and abnormally hard and thick. Lin Yuan could imagine what kind of defense this purplish-black skin had. The Medusa lizard's head was touched by Lin Yuan, and the other 3 heads did not show any dissatisfaction because Lin Yuan only touched one of them. This meant that the Medusa lizard's 4 heads were controlled by a unified soul, unlike Duanhe's contracted purple demon, which had a separate soul in each head. Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to let Genius use the connection tail to learn the Medusa lizard's language. He had plenty of time to do such things later. Lin Yuan's top priority was to enter the swamp world through the Klein Hub. After entering the swamp world for the first time, the Klein Hub would not make a special mark on every location in the swamp world. Only after Lin Yuan selected a location would the Klein Hub mark the location and set it as his base camp. The next time he entered and exited through the Klein Hub, he would appear at the marked location. Therefore, the first thing Lin Yuan had to do in the swamp world was to choose a place suitable for his development and also suitable for Endless Summer's sacred source life form, the Arakawa orchid sprout. He also had to expel or remove all factors that were detrimental to his development within this location. After entering the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan immediately let the Slaughter Sky Butterfly transform into a size suitable for him to ride on. Lin Yuan rode on the Slaughter Sky Butterfly's back and passed through the Klein Hub just like when he entered the Class 2 Tide Swamp Dimensional Rift. However, when Lin Yuan truly entered the swamp world, he was immediately stunned by the scene in front of him. Third, end of this chapter. Chapter 955. He saw a giant tortoise that was the size of a small mountain letting out an angry roar. The giant tortoise's back lit up with layers of earthen yellow ripples. The spikes on the tortoise's shell separated from the tortoise's back and turned into 2-story tall hills that smashed indiscriminately around the giant tortoise. With this smash, all the swamp crocodiles that were preparing to attack the giant tortoise were cleared. The swamp crocodiles that were 4 to 5 meters long were turned into meat paste. The meat paste formed by the swamp crocodiles was mixed in the pitch-black swamp, causing the swamp to turn brownish-red in color. Even so, the swamp crocodiles at the periphery of the giant tortoise still didn't take a step back. However, after the giant tortoise's attack, the swamp crocodiles at the periphery were clearly timid and didn't dare to go forward to restrain the giant tortoise. At that moment, a bewitching and sweet song echoed, and the song was filled with obscure and incomprehensible syllables. After the song echoed, the swamp crocodiles that originally had the intention to retreat no longer had any fear and hesitation. They immediately attacked the giant tortoise. To these swamp crocodiles that were 4 to 5 meters long, this giant tortoise that was close to 20 meters long was simply too huge. Even so, these swamp crocodiles were still biting onto the exposed thick skin of the giant tortoise's limbs and rolled for a while. The rolling of a swamp crocodile wouldn't cause any substantial damage to the thick skin of the giant tortoise's limbs. In fact, it would even cause the swamp crocodile's teeth to break. However, thousands of swamp crocodiles were still besieging the giant tortoise, causing its limbs to be drenched in blood. As the giant tortoise roared in pain, layers of earth and yellow light patterns appeared on the giant tortoise's shell again. Just as the giant tortoise was preparing to attack, 3 dark green energy arrows suddenly shot into the giant tortoise's mouth. The 3 dark green energy arrows consecutively shot into the same spot in the giant tortoise's mouth. The last arrow actually faintly penetrated the giant tortoise's neck. The dark green energy arrows carried powerful corrosive venom and immediately caused the small hole in the giant tortoise's neck to start to spread out. At that moment, the giant tortoise's earthen yellow wave became even stronger. The giant tortoise struggled to shake its neck, and a large amount of earthen yellow energy surged towards the wound on its neck. Under the nourishment of the earthen yellow energy, the giant tortoise's neck started to grow new flesh at a visible speed. The new flesh grew rapidly, trying to fill up the wounds caused by the corrosion of the 3 dark green arrows. This was to prevent blood from spraying out like a sprinkler due to the rupture of the blood vessels in the neck. At this moment, the strange and melodious voice suddenly became hurried. Lin Yuan looked over and saw a half-human life form with a woman's upper body, a green snake's lower body, and a head full of colorful snakes twisting its body. The strange green eyes of the half-humanoid creature suddenly turned gray. Then, the wound on the giant tortoise's neck that was about to be healed quickly petrified. The newly grown flesh sprouts broke off from the giant tortoise's body in a petrified state. The wound on the giant tortoise's neck expanded again, and this time, the flesh around the wound was petrified. It was to prevent the giant tortoise's body from growing new flesh to mend the hole. He did not expect to witness a fierce battle as soon as he entered the swamp world. The swamp rock tortoise and the Medusa demon were rare existences in the dimensional rift. In comparison, the swamp rock tortoise should be rarer than the Medusa demon. Upon seeing the situation before him, Lin Yuan could not tell if the swamp rock tortoise had designs on the Medusa demon's territory and wanted to devour the Medusa demon's swamp. Moreover, the Medusa demoness was actively searching for and hunting marsh rock turtles in the swamp world. However, after careful analysis, Lin Yuan felt that the former was more likely. This was because Lin Yuan realized that this swamp rock tortoise was already class 7, and its strength was comparable to a myth-I Fey. This Medusa demon had just reached class 6. Even if it had the ability to control the swamp, it still could not actively hunt prey that was 1 grade higher than itself. This Medusa demon also had a level 6 Medusa monitor lizard nesting beside it. Half of this class 6 Medusa demon's body had caved in from the swamp rock tortoise's attack, and it obviously could not survive. Now, even exhaling was especially strenuous. Lin Yuan also keenly noticed that there was a small snake lying on the Medusa demon's head of colorful snake hair that looked completely different from the snake hair. This small snake's scales were smoother and had a jade green color. From time to time, it would climb in the snake hair, looking very timid, as though it wanted to completely hide its body in the snake hair. Lin Yuan's heart stirred. The Medusa demon was a life form that rejected life forms that did not have blood relations with them. The little snake hidden in the Medusa's hair couldn't be this Medusa's child, could it? Logically speaking, a young Medusa demon should also have a human body, a snake tail, and a head full of snake hair. With ecstatic emotions, Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check on this small snake hidden in the snake hair. After a glance, Lin Yuan clenched his fist abruptly. Lin Yuan did not expect that he had actually guessed correctly. He had actually encountered an extremely rare snake Medusa. It was true that the snake Medusa was a dimensional life form, but the mutated snake Medusa could be contracted by spirit chi professionals like ordinary Fays. Moreover, the snake Medusa did not have a specific division and did not have limitations. Anyone could form a contract with the Medusa serpent. Morbius had now reached Silver X/Fantasy I and could continue to spirit lock on another Fae. Lin Yuan's current spiritual energy could also contract one or two more phases. Therefore, Lin Yuan had designs on this snake Medusa. Lin Yuan felt that he was really too lucky to have encountered such a huge fortuitous encounter as soon as he entered the swamp world. Medusa's snake transformation was due to an uncontrollable mutation that occurred during the evolution process. This small snake Medusa in front of him seemed to be only at the standard of a class 1-dimensional life form. The fact that the Medusa demon had transformed into a snake at this time could be considered a miracle among all the Medusas that had transformed into snakes. If this snake Medusa's grade was too high, Lin Yuan would not be able to contract it. It was not that there were no other ways to make a high-level snake Medusa submit besides a contract. However, Lin Yuan did not intend to use those methods that were not suitable for children. Even if he used methods that were not suitable for children, it would not be easy to make a highly intelligent dimensional life form submit. In particular, it was an extremely arrogant dimensional life form like the Medusa. The marsh rock tortoise in front of him was a class 7-dimensional life form after all. It already had the law origin crystal in its body, and its strength was far from what these marsh crocodiles and class 6 Medusa demons could compare to. The first was even stronger. End of this chapter. Chapter 956. Moreover, the swamp rock tortoise fed on mud in the swamp world. The mud devoured by the swamp rock tortoise would be stored in its stomach for nourishment. When injured, the swamp rock tortoise would decompose the nutrients in the swamp soil to recover from its injuries. Now that a large number of marsh crocodiles had died, the marsh rock tortoise's victory was practically guaranteed. Although the swamp rock tortoise usually fed on swamp soil, it had come to this Medusa's territory to feed on the swamp soil. However, as a dimensional creature, the marsh rock tortoise was also cruel by nature. Before the swamp rock tortoise swallowed the mud and left, it would definitely try to kill the Medusa mother and daughter pair. Right now, the level 6 Medusa's face was already showing obvious sorrow and pain. Highly intelligent creatures had always attached great importance to kinship and bloodline. The level 6 Medusa monster was struggling to reach her hand into her snake hair, holding her daughter who had just evolved for the first time since she was born. For a moment, he did not know what to do. Even if the Medusa could toss her daughter away, she wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being killed by the marsh rock tortoise no matter how far she was tossed. When the marsh rock tortoise killed the last marsh crocodile and cruelly swam toward the Medusa demon, Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to let the creation breed sky butterfly make a move. Instead, he summoned the Medusa giant lizard, which had just undergone the perfect source nature baptism and was stored in the leaf-shaped face storage box. After the Medusa monitor lizard was summoned, its 4 heads immediately let out 4 deafening roars. Lin Yuan said as he looked at the Medusa monitor lizard. Go spar with that rank 7 swamp rock tortoise. Let's see how you fare against it. After the perfect source baptism, the Medusa lizard was still at rank 4. However, the Medusa lizard's strength had already reached the standard of a level 6-dimensional creature. Since he wanted to test the Medusa monitor's strength, he had to find a powerful opponent for it. No opponent was more suitable than the class 7 swamp rock tortoise that had just experienced a fierce battle. After hearing Lin Yuan's instructions, the Medusa monitor lizard dragged its 12-meter-long body and fearlessly charged at the 20-meter-long swamp rock tortoise. When it was close to the swamp rock tortoise, the Medusa monitor rock tortoise swung its long tail and stabbed it precisely like a sharp sword at the wound on its neck. As a result, the Medusa monitor lizard's tail pierced through the swamp rock tortoise's neck. Previously, he had discovered that there was a thick layer of sharp, spiral-shaped keratin at the end of the Medusa monitor lizard's long tail, which had gone through the perfect source nature baptism. He didn't expect the spiral-shaped keratin at the end of the Medusa lizard's tail to be used like this. The long tail on the Medusa lizard's body was like a spear that could freely pierce through flesh and blood. Logically speaking, the marsh rock tortoise shouldn't have been injured so easily by the giant Medusa lizard. Tortoise's Medusa. Hard, and tortoise rock tortoise, and tortoise. And tortoise, and. However, the moment the Medusa monitor lizard appeared, the swamp rock tortoise's eyes were focused on the totem on the Medusa monitor lizard's front body. Now that the Medusa monitor lizard's tail had pierced through the wound, the swamp rock tortoise struggled violently and prepared to counterattack. The Medusa monitor lizard's four heads moved, and its four mouths bit the swamp rock tortoise's neck from four directions. The Medusa monitor lizard's sharp teeth pierced through the swamp rock tortoise's hard skin. Immediately after, the Medusa monitor lizard's saliva, which contained a large amount of bacteria, was secreted again. In just a moment, a rotting smell came from the swamp rock tortoise's neck. The corrosion of bacteria and the rotting flesh made the swamp rock tortoise's neck abnormally weak. The Medusa monitor lizard's four heads twisted together, and the swamp rock tortoise's head and body were separated. It could be said that the swamp rock tortoise had no chance of survival. It was only waiting for this massive creature to release the last bit of energy in its body before it stopped struggling. However, the Medusa monitor lizard didn't care. Even if the swamp rock tortoise was destined to die, it still lifted its 1-meter-long forelimbs and stomped on the swamp rock tortoise's wound. It sped up the swamp rock tortoise's death. Lin Yuan couldn't help but click his tongue when he saw the Medusa monitor lizard's display of strength. The Medusa monitor lizard's combat ability made Lin Yuan feel that spending 400 portions of source-type power was definitely not in vain. Just as Lin Yuan was preparing to deal with the mother and daughter pair, the Medusa monitor lizard had already run in front of him. Its four heads were all pointing at the Class 6 Medusa monitor lizard at the mother and daughter pair's feet. It was obvious that it wanted to devour the Class 6 Medusa monitor lizard that was on its last breath to evolve and increase its grade. Lin Yuan didn't reject it. After the Medusa lizard underwent a perfect source-type baptism, it needed to eat a large number of dimensional creatures of the same level as it and Medusa lizards of the same species if it wanted to evolve again to raise its strength. This was a good opportunity. After devouring this Class 6 Medusa, the Class 4 Medusa that had undergone a perfect source nature baptism would likely be upgraded to Class 5. Lin Yuan looked at the Medusa giant lizard, which was so hungry that it almost jumped up. Since you've signed a contract with me, I might as well give you a name. From now on, you will be called Shi Teng. The Medusa giant lizard now had extremely high intelligence. Upon hearing that Lin Yuan had given it a name, its four heads immediately roared. The roar had a silly glee to it. It was obvious that the Medusa giant lizard liked the name that Lin Yuan had given it. He had named it Lizard Teng because he wanted to know why a Medusa would grow a totem on its front body after a perfect source nature baptism. Just as Shi Teng was running toward the dying Class 6 Medusa giant lizard, an interesting scene happened. Logically speaking, this Level 6 Medusa monitor lizard was considered the Level 6 Medusa demon's personal guard. If Shi Teng wanted to devour the Level 6 Medusa monitor lizard's flesh, the Medusa demon should have attacked Shi Teng. However, when the Medusa giant lizard saw Shi Teng's four heads tearing the Class 6 Medusa giant lizard's flesh, it did not stop him. Instead, it stared at the amber-colored totem on Shi Teng's front body and knelt on the spot like a believer worshipping the god he believed in. This scene made Lin Yuan's eyes widen. He didn't expect to discover the extraordinariness of Shi Teng's totem as soon as he entered the swamp world. Lin Yuan heard the Medusa giant lizard raise its head with intoxicated eyes and sing a strange ballad. Chapter 958. Lin Yuan communicated his thoughts with Shi Teng through the interconnection tail, and Shi Teng immediately roared at the Medusa. The Medusa snake demon hurriedly stood up. She pulled off the Medusa snake demon that was hiding on her head and stretched her hands forward. It then stood there like a marionette, ready to be manipulated by Lin Yuan. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan nodded at Genius. Immediately after, another tail fell off from Genius' back and turned into a silver ribbon. It connected Genius to the Class 6 Medusa. The four black wings on Lin Yuan's back spread out and flapped as he arrived in front of the Medusa. He was about to take the trembling Medusa from the hands of the Medusa snake demon. At that moment, the snake Medusa was trembling in fear in its mother's hands. It did not understand why its mother, who had been taking care of it meticulously since birth, would pull it off from the snake hair and give it to someone else. For a moment, the snake Medusa could not help but quickly twist its body in its mother's hands as though it was saying, "Mommy, I'm so scared. I still want to hide on Mommy's head and don't leave my little tail outside." Its mother's indifference and the fact that Lin Yuan, who was flapping his 4 black wings, were getting closer and closer to it, made the little snake Medusa increasingly afraid. Upon seeing that Lin Yuan's hand was about to touch it, the little snake Medusa hurriedly curled up its body and rolled itself up. It hid its head in the middle of its body and shivered, not daring to come out. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan's hand movements became even gentler. Under normal circumstances, the Medusa would be able to become a Class 2-dimensional life form after being born for a year. This snake Medusa, which had mutated at Class 1, should have been born for less than a year and was still a child. After Lin Yuan gently took the snake Medusa with one hand, his other hand shook and took out a piece of crispy rainbow fish coat. As a humanoid life form, the Medusa's diet was similar to that of humans. However, due to the environmental restrictions in the swamp world, the Medusa only had the opportunity to eat raw food. The fragrance emitted by the crispy rainbow fish coat surged into the snake Medusa's nose. The snake Medusa's sense of smell was extremely sharp. After capturing the smell, it would magnify the smell dozens of times. Then, it flicked out its forked tongue and accurately located the scent it smelled. At this moment, the snake Medusa was spitting out her tongue from her curled body. Lin Yuan saw that the snake Medusa did not intend to poke its head out for a while, so he reached out and gently touched its soft scales. Lin Yuan's touch was very gentle. He wanted to use this gentle method to tell the snake Medusa that he was not a bad person. Under Lin Yuan's gentle caress, the snake Medusa only popped its head out after a long time. It looked at Lin Yuan timidly while staring at the crispy rainbow fish coat in Lin Yuan's hand. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan smiled and put the fish robe to Medusa's mouth. Lin Yuan knew that Medusa could not understand what he was saying, so he did not speak. He waved the rainbow-colored fish robe in his hand, indicating that Medusa could enjoy it if she wanted to. After confirming that Lin Yuan had no ill intentions, the snake Medusa, attracted by the fragrance of the rainbow-colored fish robe, could not help but open its mouth and gently bite the crispy fish robe, making a pleasant sound. After eating, the snake Medusa's small head immediately swayed around. It was as if it had eaten a delicacy that it had never eaten before and was spoiled by the fragrance. Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to contract the snake Medusa. The Class 6 Medusa had now become Shi Ting's believer and was considered one of his people. It was not good for Lin Yuan to contract the snake Medusa's daughter without even saying goodbye. However, looking at the snake Medusa, Shi Ting, and the Medusa demon, Lin Yuan could not help but have a headache. Lin Yuan, who was used to using true data to check phase attributes, was really not used to not being able to check the attributes of dimensional lifeforms in the swamp world. At that moment, Morbius' voice rang out in Lin Yuan's mind. Lin Yuan, true data binds to a world and leaves an imprint in the world. You can use true data to analyze any object in the world. After you use the Klein hub to determine the location in the swamp world, it will be equivalent to leaving an imprint in the swamp world. At that time, true data will be able to check the attributes of the swamp world dimensional lifeforms. Upon hearing Morbius' words, Lin Yuan immediately revealed a look of joy. If true data could check Shi Ting's attributes, Lin Yuan was very likely to check and analyze the apostle's abilities from Shi Ting's attributes. However, using the Klein hub to leave an imprint in the swamp world was not a trivial matter that could be careless. After leaving an imprint in the swamp world, the Klein hub could not be replaced again. Lin Yuan would also develop in the swamp world according to the location marked by the imprint. Therefore, the choice of this location became the most important. Lin Yuan planned to wait for Genius to learn the swamp world's language before using it to communicate with the Class 6 Medusa demon. From communicating with the Class 6 Medusa demon, he would find the most suitable location for development and construction in the nearby swamp world. Lin Yuan actually did not have high requirements for this location. It was a larger piece of land that had to be relatively enclosed. This would give him enough time to operate and develop in the swamp world. He also wanted to properly develop the swamp world, a huge treasure trove. Just as Lin Yuan and Morbius were conversing, Genius' voice echoed. Lin Yuan, Genius has roughly learned the swamp world's language. It's just that it's still a little difficult for Genius to speak these languages after learning them. It needs repeated practice. When Lin Yuan heard Genius's words, he carried Genius and said, "It's okay. Smart, transform." When Genius heard Lin Yuan, it immediately meowed. After undergoing the second form of tool transformation, it became a pair of white eyes. Lin Yuan wore the white glasses on the bridge of his nose, and a lot of knowledge about the swamp world's language immediately emerged in his mind. Just as he was about to ask the Medusa, he found that the swamp world language, which had been very fluent in his mind, became clumsy in his mouth. It sounded like a stutter with a strange accent. Lin Yuan finally knew why Genius had said that it would be a little difficult to speak the swamp world's language immediately after mastering it. This was because the muscles of its mouth and vocal cords could not immediately spit out these obscure syllables in a completely unfamiliar situation. As Shiting's believer, the Medusa could feel Shiting's fawning and respect toward Lin Yuan. First, it was even more. End of this chapter. Chapter 959. Thus, the Medusa demon respected Lin Yuan very much. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the Medusa demon's brows subconsciously twitched wildly. She wondered why this Lord Apostle in front of her, who she respected so much, could not even speak clearly. Also, what kind of weird accent was in his stuttering words? Lin Yuan did not have the time to let his mouth muscles and vocal cords get used to the swamp world's pronunciation. Lin Yuan immediately took out a body-transcending memory herbs leaf from the face storage box and put it in his mouth to gently chew. Through the body-transcending memory herbs leaf, he allowed his body to enter the super memory state. In the super memory state, Lin Yuan carefully savored the swamp world's language for a few minutes. Then, under the Medusa demon's astonished expression, he asked, "Where is there a large piece of land nearby? Is there a large piece of land nearby that has relatively rich resources and is closed off?" As a highly intelligent life form, the Medusa demon could not understand why this life form in front of her could not even speak clearly. Now, the words that came out of his mouth sounded so pleasant and fluent. Despite being astonished, the Medusa demon did not dare to neglect Lin Yuan's question. She carefully recalled for a long time before replying, "Previously, when I was pregnant with Wendy, I passed by a place. Previously, when I was pregnant with Wendy, I passed by a place. This place has the large piece of land that you mentioned, and it is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. At the same time, this place has rich swamp crocodiles that I can control. However, there are 3 swamp crocodiles there, and I was chased out of that territory by these 3 swamp crocodiles. Although the strongest of the 3 swamp crocodiles is also class 6, I didn't dare to have a conflict with them while I was pregnant with Wendy. Otherwise, if I occupied that place, I wouldn't have encountered trouble like the swamp rock tortoise." Upon hearing the Medusa demon's words, Lin Yuan nodded. It turned out that the Medusa demon, who had become familiar with him and started to become slightly active, already had a name. Her name was Wendy. As for the large piece of land that the Medusa demon had mentioned and was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, it was indeed very suitable for Lin Yuan's initial development. It had to be known that the mountains in the swamp world were very luxurious. The mountains in the swamp world were also different from the mountains in the main world. The mountains in the swamp world were condensed from a large amount of swamp mud. These mountains were not made of rocks, but were no different from the black mud at the bottom of the swamp. Therefore, the mountains in the swamp world would not restrict the territory's future development. If Lin Yuan felt that these 3 mountains were an eyesore, he would just push them down. He could also use the soil in these 3 mountains to expand the land area, saving him a lot of pure earth elemental energy expenditure in the future. Lin Yuan immediately asked the Medusa, "Can you still find that place now?" The Medusa snake demon immediately nodded and said, "We, the Medusas, have been able to remember all the paths we have taken since the beginning. As long as we have walked past a place, we will never forget it. Moreover, the place I mentioned isn't far from here. If you want to go, with my speed, you can reach it in 3 months." Upon hearing the Medusa's words, Lin Yuan let out an awkward cough. The Medusa Naga's speed was not slow. The Medusa Naga had traveled for 3 months, and it was in the swamps where the Medusa Naga were most adept at. Even if the sky killer butterfly traveled at full speed, it would take at least an hour. Lin Yuan immediately waved his hand and stored the lizard ting into the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. He then let the Medusa snake demon climb onto the sky killer butterfly's back and point the way for it. The sky killer butterfly flapped its wings and flew in the direction that the Medusa snake demon pointed. When the sky killer butterfly flapped its wings and took off, it did not forget to separate two milky blue butterfly shadows to dig out the accumulated swamp soil in the swamp rock tortoise's body. It then used the blue butterfly shadows to hand the swamp soil to Lin Yuan's hand. The swamp rock tortoise's healing and attacks would consume the nutrients in the swamp soil. Lin Yuan did not know how much swamp soil this Class 7 swamp rock tortoise had devoured when it was alive. At that moment, there were only 13 pieces of mid-grade swamp soil left in the swamp rock tortoise's stomach. Apart from these 13 pieces of mid-grade swamp soil, there was also a piece of high-grade swamp soil called vermilion rust or soil. High-grade swamp soil, vermilion rust or soil, was considered a kind of high-grade swamp soil that was rather unorthodox and useless to most plant phase. However, it was a top-grade nourishment for a small number of metal-type plant phase. Lin Yuan planned to bring this piece of high-grade vermilion rust or soil to the return from faraway manor to nurture the gold petal peony, which he had promoted to bronze/legend. It was considered making the best use of it. Lin Yuan suddenly felt that if he wanted to collect swamp soil in the future, he would just have to kill more dimensional lifeforms, swamp rock tortoises. This was much easier than clearing the swamp crocodiles and then jumping into the swamp to dig out the swamp soil. If he had the chance in the future, he could even nurture some swamp rock tortoises and let them go out to search for swamp soil freely. This way, when each swamp rock tortoise returned, it would be equivalent to bringing back a swamp fortune bag full of unknown swamp soil. At that moment, Lin Yuan realized that the bodies of the swamp crocodiles and swamp rock tortoises that had been killed by the swamp rock tortoises had a large number of decaying fungi. Some of these decaying fungi had already grown into umbrella-shaped bodies that were over a meter tall within an hour. It could be seen that the decaying fungi in the swamp world were much more active than in the swamp dimensional rift. The swamp that had just been soaked in blood was now completely devoid of any trace of pollution. Excluding the black mud underwater in the swamp world, Lin Yuan felt that the environment of the swamp world was even cleaner than the main world. After storing the swamp soil, Lin Yuan used the swamp world's language to speak to Snake Medusa, Wendy, on his wrist. Wendy, be my contract partner, okay? When Wendy heard Lin Yuan call her name and ask her a question, she lifted her small head. However, Wendy did not know what Lin Yuan was referring to as a contract partner. Immediately, Wendy thought of the rainbow fish coat that she had just eaten. As soon as she recalled the taste of the rainbow fish coat, Wendy felt a little reluctant to part with it. After Wendy becomes your contract partner, can I eat the crispy grilled slices just now? Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan smiled brightly, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. After Wendy becomes my contract partner, all my things will be Wendy's. At that time, apart from the grilled slices just now, I can give Wendy other delicious things to eat. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Wendy happily wagged her small tail. However, Wendy did not immediately agree to Lin Yuan. Instead, she turned to look at her mother. The Medusa snake demon was completely stunned by the speed of the predator butterfly at this time. The second was even faster. End of this chapter. Chapter 960. The Medusa snake demon could clearly feel the power of the killer butterfly. Coupled with the apostles' fawning and respect towards Lin Yuan, the Medusa demoness wouldn't refuse, be it for herself or Wendy. After seeing her mother nod, Wendy climbed from Lin Yuan's wrist to Lin Yuan's shoulder and finally all the way to Lin Yuan's ear. She leaned her head against Lin Yuan's ear and said softly, "Don't worry. Wendy is willing." Upon hearing that Snake Medusa Wendy was willing, Lin Yuan gently placed his hand on Wendy's ear. Then, he circulated his mental power and contracted Wendy. After the contract ended, Lin Yuan's spiritual energy and Wendy's spiritual energy formed a spiritual connection. This made Wendy and Lin Yuan even closer. Due to the addition of the Medusa snake demon on the back of the killer sky butterfly, its body size had doubled. Moreover, the slaughter sky butterfly dutifully propped up an energy shield while flying, so that Lin Yuan, the Medusa, and Medusa Wendy, who were on its back, would not be affected by the airflow. As the slaughter sky butterfly flapped its wings and flew, Lin Yuan found that the space in the swamp world was far more stable than in the main world. After the sky killer butterfly entered full-speed flight, the space of the swamp world did not ripple like in the main world. This was probably why there were dimensional rifts in the origin world. Now that he had nothing to do on the slaughter sky butterfly's back, he decided to carry out a perfect source baptism on Wendy, who he had already contracted. Lin Yuan summoned Princess, who got instructions and danced on the slaughter sky butterfly's back. 100 silk threads wrapped around Wendy's body, which was less than 30 centimeters long. Then, a faint amber-colored source power was injected into Wendy's body. Seeing the sudden change of events, especially the hundreds of threads wrapped around her daughter's body, the Medusa immediately became worried. However, he didn't dare to make any drastic movements. At this time, the Medusa snake demon saw that her daughter, who had transformed into a snake, had suddenly turned into the form of a Medusa. After that, she kept changing back and forth between her Medusa form and snake form. Lin Yuan had also been observing the snake Medusa undergoing the perfect source baptism. He had not expected that the snake Medusa would actually return to a half-human state during the perfect source baptism. In her Medusa form, Wendy looked no more than 5 or 6 years old. She had dark green hair, pure white skin, and big green eyes. She looked like a porcelain doll. During the process of Wendy's Medusa form and snake form, Lin Yuan found that the color of her dark green snake body was getting lighter little by little. In the end, it turned into an emerald green that was almost identical to the leaves of the jasmine lily. As a result, Wendy's entire snake body looked as if it was carved out of an extremely good jade. At the same time, Lin Yuan keenly noticed that Wendy's green pupils suddenly split into 3. Every pupil slowly turned into the shape of 3 flowers. 1, 2, 3. Finally, the 3 pupils turned into 3 flowers that clustered together to form a bouquet. The moment the pupils formed a bouquet, an eye-shaped totem appeared on Wendy's forehead. This eye-shaped totem also had a bouquet of 3 petals formed by Wendy's 3 pupils. The appearance of the eye-shaped totem indicated the end of Wendy's perfect source baptism. At that moment, the Class 6 Medusa snake demon looked at her daughter, Wendy, in horror. At the same time, it looked at Lin Yuan with an unprecedented fear in its eyes. In the Class 6 Medusa snake demon's understanding, apostles were the most mysterious and powerful existences. It was a supreme honor to become an apostle's believer. The Class 6 Medusa snake demon really could not understand what kind of power could make the life in front of it create an apostle. Could it be that the legend was true? After completing the source baptism, Wendy twisted her jade-like snake body and came in front of Lin Yuan. She blinked her big, watery eyes and reached out her hand. Upon seeing Wendy reach out her hand, Lin Yuan was almost melted by Wendy's cuteness. At that moment, Wendy looked 5 or 6 years old, very similar to Chu Si's age when he had just taken her to seek survival. Lin Yuan could not help but recall the time when he had pulled her to struggle. Lin Yuan picked Wendy up, but he felt a little strange when he looked at her emerald green hair. As a Medusa, Wendy's hair should be snake hair, right? Why did Wendy's hair look like a normal human's? Besides, Wendy was originally a snake Medusa. How did she turn into a Medusa after the perfect source-type baptism? Just as Lin Yuan was thinking, Wendy in his arms turned into a 30-centimeter-long snake that looked like it was carved out of jade. Wendy climbed down from Lin Yuan's arms and came in front of the Medusa snake demon. She once again turned into a humanoid Medusa and opened her hand to her mother. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan knew that Wendy could change back and forth between snake and Medusa forms. However, upon seeing Wendy open her hand to her, the Class 6 Medusa snake demon no longer dared to hug Wendy. Lin Yuan thought to himself. If the snake Medusa snake demon had not become Shiting's believer, she would have probably knelt in front of Wendy in reverence. This scene gave Lin Yuan a new understanding of the apostles. Apostle, instead of saying it was a title, it was better to say that it was a level of life. The life level of an apostle was definitely above dimensional life forms. Moreover, the hierarchy of this life level was already able to firmly suppress bloodline kinship. At that moment, Lin Yuan's heart was throbbing. Once Klein marked the location in the swamp world, Morbius would leave an imprint in the swamp world. He could finally check Wendy's, Shiting's, and the Medusa snake demon's attributes. Soon, the butchering butterfly flew to the place that the Medusa snake demon had pointed out. When he saw this place, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. This place was exactly the same as the Medusa snake demon had described. Outside the 3 mountains made of swamp mud, there was not a large swamp. Instead, there were fine pieces of land interspersed in the swamp. These pieces of land divided the swamp's waterways, making it very difficult for large swamp lifeforms to survive in this swamp. Lin Yuan was very satisfied with the environment in front of him. It could be said that the environment in front of him met his requirements. It could also meet the growth needs of the endless summer sacred sources Arakawa orchid sprout. Looking at the land under his feet, Lin Yuan's expression changed, and a faint killing intent surged out of his body. Next, I have to clean up this land. Chapter 961. Lin Yuan did not need the 3 crocodile-eating swamp otters here. They fed on swamp crocodiles, and it was reasonable to reduce the number of swamp crocodiles in the territory to a certain extent. However, Lin Yuan now had Wendy and the Class 6 Medusa, who were born with the ability to control swamp crocodiles. Therefore, the more swamp crocodiles in this water area, the better it was for Lin Yuan. Moreover, dimensional lifeforms like the crocodile-eating swamp otters did not have high intelligence and were small in size. They were very good at hiding and were very territorial. He had seized the territory of 3 swamp crocodile-eating otters. If he didn't kill these 3 swamp crocodile-eating otters, he would be constantly harassed by them for revenge. The harassment and revenge would continue until the 3 crocodile-eating swamp otters recaptured this territory. Therefore, Lin Yuan simply issued an order to the slaughter sky butterfly to kill all the dimensional lifeforms in the middle of the 3 swamp mountains indiscriminately. In any case, there would not be any overly powerful dimensional lifeforms in the territory controlled by the 3 Class 6 crocodile-eating swamp otters. Even if there were some powerful dimensional lifeforms, they should be expelled like how the crocodile-eating swamp otters had expelled the Medusa. Lin Yuan wanted to completely control this land and bring endless summer over tomorrow morning to plant the sacred source lifeform Arakawa orchid sprout on this land. He had to ensure that there was no dimensional life form in this land that could harm the young Arakawa orchid sprout. It was not that Lin Yuan did not think of letting Wendy or Shiting take in the 3 crocodile-eating swamp otters as believers. However, based on Lin Yuan's conversation with Shiting through Genius's interconnection tale, he knew that it was not easy for Shiting, an apostle, to recruit believers. It was not easy for Shiting to take in believers, but it did not mean that Shiting could not take in believers wantonly. As an apostle, when Shiting took in believers to obtain the power of faith, he also had to feed back a portion of the totem's power to the believers. He had to form a totem imprint on the believers. The formation of the totem imprint on the believers consumed the power in Shiting's front body. The power in the totem could slowly increase after obtaining the power of faith from the believers. However, this slow increase required a process and could not be replenished in a short time. According to Shiting's estimation, after Shiting took in the Class 6 Medusa as his believers, the Medusa spent nearly half a day praying every day to produce the power of faith. It would take nearly a month to replenish Shiting's consumption. In other words, Shiting's front body's totem would only be strengthened a month after taking in the Medusa as his believers. The swamp world was full of danger. It was very possible that the believers that Shiting had just recruited might have met with some accident and turned into nutrients for the scavenging fungi. The death of each believer was a significant blow to a new apostle like Shiting. Thus, Shiting had to be very careful in choosing his believers. Swamp, 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 swamp eat. Swamp, swamp, swamp otters could. The swamp crocodile eating swamp swamp creatures with creatures. Could. That wolf was. Swamp otters had potential. Was to have. SW. Just like what the level 6 Medusa demon had said, if it wasn't for the fact that it was pregnant with Wendy, the level 6 Medusa demon would have wanted to fight the 3 crocodile-eating swamp otters of the same level. Thus, dimensional lifeforms like the swamp otters were not considered strong. When the Medusa sensed the murderous aura in Lin Yuan's body, her heart tightened. As a dimensional lifeform that had lived in the swamp world for a long time, the Medusa knew that she could not control her life and death in the face of powerful lifeforms. Powerful lifeforms could deprive any life in front of them according to their preferences. At that moment, the Medusa heard an indifferent and gentle female voice. Lin Yuan, you just said that you want to clean up this land. Are you going to kill all the dimensional lifeforms in this land? Lin Yuan nodded and said, Slaughter Sky Butterfly, I'll have to trouble you. Slaughtering Butterfly, I'll have to trouble you. Leave none of the dimensional creatures in these 3 mountains alive. But you don't have to care about the dimensional lifeforms outside the mountains. The Medusa was stunned for a moment when she heard the gentle female voice. As a creature of the swamp, the Medusa could not understand the language spoken by the gentle female voice at all. However, before the Medusa snake demon could think further, the next scene that happened made the Medusa snake demon widen her eyes in horror. The sky was covered by the milky blue butterflies that filled the sky. Layers of butterfly shadows quietly scattered on the land of the 3 mountains like petals. As a dimensional life form with high intelligence, the Medusa had a strong perception of life. The Medusa could sense that after the milky blue butterfly shadows scattered on the 3 mountains, the originally lively lifeforms in the 3 mountains immediately lost their vitality. Under the milky blue butterfly shadows, those lifeforms that lost their vitality didn't even have the time to wail. When the sky was filled with butterfly shadows, the carnivorous sky butterfly spoke to Lin Yuan again. Lin Yuan, there are no longer any dimensional lifeforms in these 3 mountains. Even the swamp insects that feed on soil have been cleared by me. The 3 mountains are excellent natural barriers that can perfectly isolate the dimensional lifeforms living in the swamp. At that time, as long as I guard the empty entrance, I can ensure that no dimensional lifeforms will surge in the land of the 3 mountains. Upon hearing the killer butterfly's words, Lin Yuan immediately said, Let's land at the entrance of the 3 mountains. Let's land at the entrance of the 3 mountains. We can take a look at the environment there. If he had cleared such an area in the main world, Lin Yuan would still need to clean this area. However, in the swamp world, this behavior was completely superfluous. In about an hour, all the dead swamp dimensional lifeforms would disappear without a trace under the decomposition of the carrion-eating fungi. At that moment, Wendy climbed onto Lin Yuan's body and transformed into her Medusa form. Lin Yuan hugged Wendy and felt like he was hugging the young Chu Ci. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's instructions, the killer butterfly flapped its wings and appeared at the entrance of the 3 mountains. Standing on the land at the edge of the 3 mountains' entrances, Lin Yuan immediately found his feet sinking into the soil. This time, Lin Yuan didn't flap the 4 black wings on his back because he wanted to feel how much water this swamp world's land contained. Lin Yuan found that when he stood on the land at the edge of the 3 mountains with his weight of 65 kilograms, the middle of his calves would sink directly into the soil. The first was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 962. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows as he felt the wetness of the land. However, Lin Yuan had already expected the humidity of the land here. Because in front of the 3 mountains was a vast swamp that stretched as far as the eye could see. The water in the swamp moistened the land at the border, so it was normal for the land at the border to contain a lot of water. When Lin Yuan walked toward the interior of the 3 mountains, the water content in the land would decrease. However, due to the existence of large swamps, even the soil in the center of the 3 mountains would be maintained in a relatively moist state. Lin Yuan only saw a large number of strips in the swamp in front of him. These strips were attached to the water surface like driftwood that people could step on. However, these things were not driftwood, but swamp crocodiles that were disguised in the swamp and waiting for the swamp beasts to drink water at the edge of the swamp. However, the swamp beasts in the interior of the three mountains had been slaughtered by the slaughter sky butterflies, so it was impossible for the swamp beasts to come to the edge of the swamp to drink water. These swamp crocodiles were not stupid. If they could not wait for the swamp beasts within a period of time, they would leave this large swamp. They would go to other places to forage for food. Lin Yuan was not willing to let these swamp crocodiles leave. In fact, in Lin Yuan's opinion, these swamp crocodiles could be used as a barrier to protect the land in the middle of the three mountains. They could prevent dimensional lifeforms or swamp beasts from swimming through the swamp from other lands and coming to this land to develop and live. Lin Yuan turned his head and asked the Class 6 Medusa, who was standing beside him with an obvious look of fear on her face, "You said before that you can control the swamp crocodiles. You said that you can control the swamp crocodiles. I wonder if you can control the hundreds of swamp crocodiles at the edge of this swamp first? These swamp crocodiles are of some use to me." The Medusa hurriedly replied, "This is very simple. This is very simple. I only need to use my special talent to easily control these marsh crocodiles and keep them on the shore. Are you keeping these swamp crocodiles to use as rations for Lord Apostle?" As she spoke, the Medusa demon had already gracefully twisted her body. Then obscure syllables came out of Medusa's throat, forming a strange melody. He could now use the swamp world's language to communicate freely with the dimensional lifeforms in the swamp world, so he could easily hear the meaning of Medusa's song. Lin Yuan did not feel that the Medusa's singing voice was very amazing. In comparison, the Medusa's singing voice was far inferior to Chinese. However, the swamp crocodiles at the shore clearly didn't think so. At this moment, the originally calm swamp instantly boiled. All the marsh crocodiles in Lin Yuan's line of sight were swimming toward the Medusa demon. Based on the size of these swamp crocodiles, he could determine that they were mostly Class 3 or Class 4. Among them was a 7-meter-long giant swamp crocodile. Based on its size, Lin Yuan could determine that it was at Class 7. He didn't expect that the Class 6 Medusa would actually be able to attract Class 7 swamp crocodiles with her singing. From the looks of it, this level 7 swamp crocodile was lying beside the Medusa demon, but did not have the slightest intention of opening its huge mouth to attack the Medusa demon. He had just heard the Medusa say that the ability to control the marsh crocodiles came from its innate talent. However, what was a talent? At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the singing Medusa speak to him. "My lord, if you wish to reserve rations for the apostle, these marsh crocodiles shouldn't be enough for the apostle to eat for a few days. If you wish to control the marsh crocodiles, you just need to pour a large amount of fresh blood into the swamp. Before the fresh blood is digested by the carrion-eating fungi, you will be able to attract a large number of marsh crocodiles. But try not to pour too much of the blood of high-class lifeforms. Otherwise, the marsh crocodiles that are attracted will be too powerful. Even if my innate talent is the marsh crocodile song, and I have a stronger control over the marsh crocodiles than the other Medusa demons, I can only use the marsh crocodile song to appease and control Class 7 marsh crocodiles that are one class higher than me. If I encounter a Class 8 marsh crocodile, even if I sing the marsh crocodile song, I will still be attacked by the Class 8 marsh crocodile. There is a Class 7 marsh crocodile here, and I will need to chant the marsh crocodile song for an hour to completely control it. You don't have to wait for me here. After I control these marsh crocodiles, I will find you based on your scent." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan was even more curious. Through the Medusa demon's introduction, Lin Yuan had a general idea of the Medusa demon's innate talent, the marsh crocodile song. As apostles, did Shiteng and Wendy also have innate talents? To find out, Lin Yuan's top priority was to get Klein Hub to mark this land so that Morbius could leave a mark in the marsh world. He could also use true data to check the attributes of the marsh world dimensional lifeforms. At the same time, based on how the Medusa demon addressed him, Lin Yuan could feel the Medusa demon's respect and fear for him. In the marsh world, "Sir" was a very respectful form of address for a superior. Lin Yuan waved his hand and summoned Shiteng from the leaf-shaped diamond-trapped spirit. When Lin Yuan saw Shiteng, he immediately widened his eyes. Back when Shiteng had devoured the Class 6 Medusa lizard, Even though its 4 huge heads had 4 times the eating speed of a normal Medusa lizard, the Class 6 Medusa lizard's nearly 10-meter-long body was simply too huge. However, the Class 6 Medusa lizard's nearly 10-meter-long body was simply too huge. If Shi Ting wanted to completely devour the entire Class 6 Medusa lizard, it would take at least half an hour. Lin Yuan simply stored Shi Ting and the Class 6 Medusa lizard in the diamond face storage box. However, he did not expect that Shi Ting would actually evolve after eating the Class 6 Medusa lizard in the leaf-shaped face storage box. It had evolved from a Class 4-dimensional life form to a Class 5-dimensional life form. Shi Ting's previous 16-meter-long body was already huge enough. Now, it should be at least 20 meters long from head to tail. Moreover, the change in Shi Ting's body did not come from the length of its body but from its height and width. Although Shi Ting, who had evolved from a 4th-level dimensional creature to a 5th-level dimensional creature, had only increased its body length by 4 meters, it was nearly twice as thick as before. At the same time, after Shi Ting evolved into a Class 5-dimensional life form, its original 4 lizard heads had become 5. What surprised Lin Yuan the most was that each of Shi Ting's 5 lizard heads had a single horn, which was different from the curved and forked horns of Wyrm species phase. At that moment, Shi Ting, who had evolved into a Class 5-dimensional creature, had 5 horns on his 5 lizard heads that were straight and long in the shape of a spiral. They looked very similar to the spirals on Shi Ting's tail. 166 Reading Network. Chapter 963. Every spiral horn on the lizard's head was nearly 2 meters long, which meant that the horn was very penetrative. If the 5-headed lizard charged forward, its head could be used as a headbutt. Even the Class 7 swamp rock tortoise's shell would not be able to withstand the lizard's headbutt. Looking at the lizard's sharper and thicker claws, Lin Yuan felt that the lizard was simply a physical killing machine. Lin Yuan looked at the lizard and said, "Stay here with the Medusa. You stay here with the Medusa demon. I'll come find you in a while." After saying that, he strode toward the interior of this land. After walking for about 10 minutes, Lin Yuan realized that the ground would no longer reach his calves when he walked. Instead, it only reached his ankles. After walking for a few more minutes, Lin Yuan stopped and threw an ethereal jellyfish's tentacle into the ground as a marker. The humidity here was undoubtedly the most suitable for the growth of the sacred source life form, the mountain green orchid sprout. After using the ethereal jellyfish's tentacle to mark the location, Lin Yuan flapped his 4 black wings and flew toward the center of the land surrounded by the 3 mountains. The land surrounded by the 3 mountains was not small. Lin Yuan had walked for 15 minutes and flew for another 5 minutes before reaching the center of the land. Lin Yuan estimated that the land surrounded by the 3 mountains should be about a quarter of Redbud City's Xia region. It was even bigger than a quarter of Redbud City's Xia region. Such an area was enough for Lin Yuan to develop and build. When he arrived at the center, Lin Yuan spoke to Morbius in his mind. "Morbius, I've decided to set the Klein Hub's location in the swamp world here." Morbius replied, "Lin Yuan, you've chosen a good place." "Yuan, the place you chose is really good. Most of the dimensional life forms in the swamp world like humidity. It should be very difficult for especially powerful swamp dimensional life forms to come to this place. Relying on the endless swamp to defend this area, the swamp always brings us surprises." While speaking, Morbius and Lin Yuan activated the Klein Hub together, and a red circular array immediately appeared on the ground. A Klein Hub identical to the one in the Spirit Lock spatial zone immediately appeared in the center of the red circular array. The moment the Klein Hub appeared in the swamp world, a door immediately opened in the swamp world. Lin Yuan walked through the door and realized that he had returned to the Spirit Lock spatial zone. After crossing the portal through the Klein Hub in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, he returned to the marked location in the swamp world. At this moment, he finally had his base camp in the swamp world. At that moment, Morbius' voice rang out in his mind again. "Yuan, I've marked the swamp world. You can now check the true data of the dimensional lifeforms in the swamp world at any time." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan immediately looked at Wendy, who had fallen asleep in his arms at some point in time. Now, Wendy was like a small sloth, tightly hugging herself, the small tree. He used Morbius True Data on Wendy. Then, Wendy's attributes appeared in front of him. Exotic beast name, Snake Medusa, life form, Apostle, exotic beast level, level 1, power of faith, extremely weak, faith totem, Triflower snake pupil totem talent specialty frowny face snake descendants paradise, can rapidly increase the growth speed of the snake phase around you. You can rapidly increase your strength through the venom of the snake phase around you. You can also cultivate the snake phase around you into your own snake hair. At the same time, you can purify the venom of the snake phase and transmit the venom through your eyes by using petrification. Wild plant affinity, release your own aura and obtain the predatory plant's favor. At the same time, you can use singing to appease the predatory plant's emotions and obtain the predatory plant's protection. Power of faith frowny face blood person transformation. By injecting a portion of the totem's energy into the blood person's body, the blood person's life form can be transformed, allowing the blood person's life form to transform from an ordinary dimensional creature into a blessed believer through the power of the totem. Looking at Wendy's true data, Lin Yuan pondered in his mind. According to Wendy's true data, Lin Yuan could find that there was a huge difference between the attributes of dimensional life forms and phase. At the same time, Lin Yuan found that he had not guessed wrong. Apostles were indeed a kind of life form. Moreover, dimensional life forms like apostles could already use the power of faith. Faith came from the totem. At that moment, the power of faith contained in the triflower snake pupil totem on Wendy's forehead was extremely weak. Looking at Wendy's two talents, Lin Yuan raised his brows. Now, Lin Yuan finally knew why Wendy didn't have snake hair like other Medusas. Wendy's snake hair had to be nurtured by herself. Wendy could use the venom in the snake hair she had nurtured to enhance her eyes and release the venom through the petrifying ability of her eyes. In other words, the stronger the venom of the snake hair Wendy nurtured, the stronger the attack power of her eyes. Lin Yuan felt that Wendy was lucky to have signed a contract with him. After all, there were not many snake-dimensional life forms in the swamp world. Moreover, most of the snakes in the swamp world were huge, giant snake-dimensional life forms that did not have venom through their physical attacks. Even if Wendy nurtured these giant snake life forms that did not have venom into snake hair, it would not be of much help to Wendy. It was not easy to find and collect all kinds of snake phase in the vast swamp. However, the snake species phase in the main world were very rich in variety. Most of the snake phase in the main world were poison type. These poison type snake phase would constantly increase their venom as their strength increased. At that time, Lin Yuan could take these venomous snake phase in the main world to the swamp world and nurture them into snake hair for Wendy. As Wendy continuously nurtured different snake phase with huge venom into snake hair, these different snake phase would all offer their venom to Wendy when she used the petrifying ability, forming a fierce mixed poison. Most importantly, Wendy could also increase her strength through the venom offered by the snake phase around her. Wendy's talent, the Snake Descendants Paradise, could quickly increase her strength. It might even surpass Wendy's mother, the Class 6 Medusa, in a very short time. As for Wendy's second talent, Wild Plant Affinity, Lin Yuan felt that it should be very similar to the Class 6 Medusa's talent, Swamp Crocodile Song. However, the Class 6 Medusa's Swamp Crocodile Song was targeted at dimensional lifeforms like the swamp crocodile. Wendy's Wild Plant Affinity was targeted at predatory plants at the top of the food chain in the swamp world. Third. End of this chapter. Chapter 964. Lin Yuan suddenly recalled that red thorn was also a predatory plant, but it was still fusing with the two source seeds and had yet to awaken. Wendy's second talent, Wild Plant Affinity, could make predatory plants feel close to each other. If red thorn completed its transformation and awakened, it should also be attracted to Wendy and become her good friend. Lin Yuan still had no clue about Wendy's Power of Faith's believer transformation. Power of Faith's believer transformation was to inject a portion of the totem's energy into the believer's body to transform the believer's life form. The believer transformed from an ordinary dimensional life form to a blessed believer through the totem's power. Wendy had just become an apostle and did not have her own believer. Therefore, Lin Yuan could not let Wendy transform her believer's life form from an ordinary dimensional life form to a blessed believer. Lin Yuan felt that the power of faith's believer transformation should be an ability that all apostles shared. Of course, Lin Yuan had not used true data to check Shiting's true data. Therefore, Lin Yuan was only guessing that the power of faith's believer transformation was an ability that all apostles shared. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the sound of the ground trembling. It was obvious that there was a huge creature running on the ground, and it was heading in his direction. Lin Yuan looked up and saw Shiting galloping toward him with his 5 lizard heads swaying from afar. Shiting's running speed was obviously faster than the Class 6 Medusa, but the Medusa was also moving its snake body with all its might to follow behind Shiting. Lin Yuan immediately used true data to check on Shiting. Alien beast name, Medusa Monitor Lizard, form, Apostle, Alien beast level, Class 5, Power of Faith, extremely weak, Apostle Totem, multi-headed lizard beast totem talent specialty frowny face bone reinforcement, reduces the speed of evolution and strengthens the bones with the nutrients absorbed by the body, greatly increasing the strength of the bones. Multi-headed body, every time you level up, you will grow an extra head. At the same time, the previous head will be strengthened. The heads will be controlled by a single soul, and each head will be equal in strength. As long as one head is intact, you will be able to survive. After the head is destroyed, you can replenish your energy with food, allowing the broken head to regrow. Power of Faith, Believer Transformation. By injecting a portion of the totem's energy into the believer's body, the blood person's life form can be transformed, allowing the blood person's life form to transform from an ordinary dimensional creature into a blessed believer through the power of the totem. At a glance, he found that his guess was indeed correct. The power of faith was indeed an ability all apostles had. Right now, Shiting and Wendy's power of faith was extremely weak. He felt that when he strengthened the power of faith in Wendy and the lizard totem, it should not be as simple as transforming the believers. Now that he had seen Shiting's true data, he finally understood why there had been such a huge change when Shiting had advanced from Class 4 to Class 5. Based on Shiting's multi-headed body, Lin Yuan knew that it would grow a new head every time it leveled up. At the same time, the newly grown head would be strengthened. For example, when Shiting leveled up from level 4 to level 5, each of his heads grew a 2-meter-long spiral horn. This was the power of Shiting's multi-headed body. Based on the data of Shiting's multi-headed body, Lin Yuan knew that the new heads would not increase Shiting's weaknesses. Instead, each head was a weapon that Shiting could use to attack, defend, or abandon in battle. This was because once Shiting's heads were damaged in battle, they could grow again after a few meals to obtain nutrients. This was tantamount to greatly improving Shiting's survivability. Moreover, every time Shiting leveled up, the changes in its heads might bring Lin Yuan a surprise like this 2-meter-long spiral horn. As for Shiting's other talent, the seemingly ordinary bone reinforcement, Lin Yuan did not feel that it was of little value. Instead, he felt that the bone reinforcement was more useful than having a multi-headed body to some extent. After becoming an apostle, Shiting's body was so huge that Lin Yuan found it unbelievable. It was now nearly 20 meters long at Class 5. It was hard to imagine how huge it would be when it reached Class 8. The larger a life form was, the higher the requirement for bones. Strong bones could enhance the life form's mobility. This allowed the life form to not be crushed by its huge body and weight when moving. It could be said that Shiting could grow such a huge body and become so thick after leveling up. It could be said that a large part of it was indirectly caused by the bone reinforcement. The strong bones also allowed Shiting to use its physical strength to collide and attack in battle. At the same time, the sharp horns, claws, and teeth on its head were also part of the bones. The bone reinforcement also imperceptibly strengthened Shiting's offensive power. Based on Shiting's talent, Lin Yuan knew that Shiting was an out-and-out physical-type apostle. Wendy was considered a spell-type apostle. Wendy and Shiting had one spell, so they could make up for and help each other in the swamp world. At the same time, Wendy's talent, wild plant affinity, allowed Wendy to collect predatory plants in the swamp world as her believers. Shiting could collect other intelligent lifeforms besides predatory plants as its believers. Wendy and Shiting could also choose their believers without disturbing each other. This was currently the best state. Lin Yuan did not intend to use source power to conduct a perfect source baptism on more dimensional lifeforms in a short time to create more apostles. It would be a waste to throw out 100 portions of source power to create more apostles. Moreover, more apostles would develop in this land that was only 1/4 the size of the Xia region, and there would be conflicts over the collection of believers. The princess used the source power absorbed from the law source crystal to enhance the complete laws, which was equivalent to subtly increasing Lin Yuan's strength. Previously, Lin Yuan had used the Dark Crow Withering Strike, which was produced in Holy Sword mode in Dark Death's nomological world, and he had deeply experienced the benefits of sword skills. Therefore, Lin Yuan planned to transform a complete set of laws into a nomological world to obtain new sword skills to enhance his strength. However, Lin Yuan still needed to think about how to let the princess evolve into a world's laws. With the power of Dark Death's nomological world, Lin Yuan was no longer in a hurry to constantly add more trump cards. The Dark Crow Withering Strike formed in Dark Death's nomological world was an offensive ability. The first was even more powerful. End of this chapter. Chapter 965. In terms of attack, the Dark Crow Withering Strike was enough for Lin Yuan to use. Therefore, Lin Yuan planned to focus more on functionality in the choice of the new law world. Besides observing Shiting's true data, Lin Yuan did not forget to observe the Class 6 Medusa Demon's true data. Alien Beast Name, Medusa Demon, Life Form, Dimensional Life Form, Alien Beast Level, Class 6, Totem Belief, Multi-Headed Lizard Beast Totem Talent Specialty Frowny Face Swamp Crocodile Song, uses singing to summon swamp crocodiles that are not higher than the user's level. At the same time, during the singing phase, the swamp crocodiles that are not higher than the user's level within a certain range enter a submissive state. The Class 6 Medusa Demon's life form was a dimensional life form, so its data was much simpler than Shiting's and Wendy's apostles. Moreover, Class 6 Medusa Demons only had one innate ability. Shiting and Wendy should have transformed into apostles under the perfect source baptism and obtained a new talent specialty. Lin Yuan had seen the Class 6 Medusa Demon's talent specialty, Swamp Crocodile Song. The talent specialty, Swamp Crocodile Song, was equivalent to enhancing the Medusa Demon's ability to control swamp crocodiles. This ability to control swamp crocodiles, which were the highest at Class 7, was also a great help to Lin Yuan. At the very least, Lin Yuan did not need to worry about Shiting's food in the future. Looking at Shiting, who ran close to him, Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and asked Shiting in the swamp language. Shiting, will using the power of faith to transform the Medusa Demon's believers consume a lot of the power of faith in the totem? Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, Shiting immediately yelled out syllables and communicated with Lin Yuan seriously. Master, my power of faith is extremely weak. I can only transform the power of faith in 3 believer totems at most. Turn these believers who have been transformed by the power of faith into believers of grace. The power of faith in my body is still very weak. After transforming the Medusa Demon, I'll enter a weak state within 3 days due to the overdraft of faith. The Class 6 Medusa Demon, who had spent a lot of effort to keep up with Shiting, heard Lin Yuan's words, and its eyes flickered. Based on the conversation between Lin Yuan and Lord Shiting, they had the intention of promoting themselves from ordinary believers to of blessed believers. In the swamp world, the swamp dimensional lifeforms had no fixed residence and had no home. Even when he was sleeping, he had to be extremely vigilant. If he wasn't careful, he would lose his life. Believers who could become apostles would have their bodies engraved with the totems of the apostles they believed in. Believers with totem marks had a higher status in the swamp world than dimensional creatures without totem marks. Having the apostle's totem on her body, for the Medusa Demoness, was already an unmatched glory. Medusa never thought that she would immediately have the opportunity to become a believer of grace right after becoming a believer. One had to know that becoming a blessed believer would increase one's life tier. At that time, according to the totem they believed in, their bodies and special abilities would be strengthened once. Lin Yuan asked after hearing Shiting's words. What benefits do you get from promoting your believers to favored believers? Hearing that, Shiting shook his 5 heads and said, the amount of faith the favored chosen receives every day is far higher than that of ordinary believers. At the same time, the favored chosen also has the ability to obtain faith from the life forms they worship. The blessed believers can collect this faith and offer it to the apostles. This Medusa's talent is the swamp crocodile song. It can control the swamp crocodiles, so it can extract faith from the swamp crocodiles. I don't think it's a bad deal to transform this Medusa demon from a normal believer to a blessed believer through the power of faith. Lin Yuan nodded in response. There's no harm in transforming this Medusa demon into a believer right now. During this period of time when you are weak, you will stay on this land obediently. I will let the sky killer butterfly protect your safety. Wait until you recover from the exhaustion caused by overconsumption of faith energy, then wander around the territory. The Medusa demon saw that Lin Yuan and Lord Shiting had decided to promote her from an ordinary believer to a favored believer. She was pleasantly surprised. At this time, the Medusa felt that she should show off. On one hand, it was to repay Lord Shiting, and on the other, it was to make Lord Shiting value him more. Lord Shiting, my name is Scaled Concubine. The Medusa lizard that I contracted is dead. My snake hair can continue to secrete pheromones that attract Medusa lizards. I can use the pheromones to attract Medusa demon lizards that want to find the Medusa demon lizards. When the time comes, Lord Shiting can choose to take these Medusa lizards in as believers or eat them. Upon hearing the Medusa demon Scaled Concubine's words, Lin Yuan looked at her in surprise. The Scaled Concubine was simply a black widow. Under normal circumstances, black widows would kill their partners in order to breed their partner's descendants. The Scaled Concubine only used the pheromones to seduce the Medusa lizards, but she did not form a contract with them. Instead, she tricked these Medusa lizards into serving as Shiting's rations so that Shiting could advance quickly. Lin Yuan only wanted Storm to praise the Scaled Concubine for 5 minutes. The Scaled Concubine was really a little genius. With the Scaled Concubine around, Shiting had the swamp crocodile's rations and the Medusa lizard's flesh needed to evolve. There was no need for Lin Yuan to think of a way to prepare for Shiting. When Shiting heard the Medusa demon's Scaled Concubine's words, he used the side of his head to give her a big tumble. It was a reward for the Scaled Concubine. Before the Scaled Concubine could get up from the heavy blow, the multi-headed lizard totem on Shiting's front body had already lit up with amber light. An amber halo was injected from Shiting's multi-headed lizard totem to the totem imprint on the Scaled Concubine's body, which Shiting had set as a chosen. Under the injection of the amber power of faith, the skin on the Scaled Concubine's body became wrinkled, as if a layer of skin was about to fall off her body. Although the Medusa demon was a humanoid creature, it would still molt like a snake fae every time its body shape changed. When the wrinkled snakeskin appeared on the Scaled Concubine's body, the color of the wrinkled snakeskin became darker and darker. It was impossible to see the situation inside. Only when the multi-headed lizard totem on Shiting's front body no longer transmitted amber energy did the Scaled Concubine twist in the thick snakeskin that wrapped around her. Immediately after, Lin Yuan saw 4 hands penetrate the snakeskin and come out. Chapter 966. The 4 slender and bony hands tore the wrinkled skin around the Scaled Concubine into pieces. At this moment, the Scaled Concubine, who had transformed from a believer to a believer, was taller than before. After the Medusa stood up, most of her snake body was stuck to the ground. This made the actual height of the Scaled Concubine only around 1.7 meters. The current Scaled Concubine's height had risen to 1.9 meters, 10 centimeters taller than Lin Yuan. Compared to the increase in size, Lin Yuan felt that the biggest change in the Scaled Concubine was her newly grown arms. In the past, the Scaled Concubine could shoot 3 energy arrows in an instant with only 2 hands. Right now, the Scaled Concubine, who only had 2 hands, could shoot out twice the amount of energy arrows, greatly increasing the Scaled Concubine's attack power. Moreover, the snake hair on the Scaled Concubine's head had become even thicker. One had to know that the Medusa Naga's hair was not just for decoration. In close combat, the Medusa Naga's hair was the Medusa Naga's strongest means of attack. Lin Yuan used true data to check on the scaled concubine, who had transformed into a favored believer. Exotic beast name, Medusa monster, life form, dimensional creature, blessed believer, exotic beast level, 6 level, totem worship, multi-headed lizard totem innate skills frowny face swamp crocodile song, uses singing to summon swamp crocodiles that are not higher than your own level. At the same time, any swamp crocodiles that hear your song will feel close to you and gather around you. Swamp crocodiles that were no higher than 2 levels than themselves would enter a state of obsession after listening to the song for an hour. They would then be able to perfectly control the song in any form. He found that after the Medusa-scaled concubine became a chosen, her life form had changed under true data. Apart from the change in her life form, the Medusa snake demon scaled belle did not gain any new talents after becoming a believer. Scaled concubine still only had 1 talent, but at this moment, scaled concubine's talent, the swamp crocodile song, had undergone an earth-shattering change. Previously, the scaled concubine's talent, the swamp crocodile song, could only control a swamp crocodile that was no higher than her own level. Now, the upper limit was no higher than 2 levels. In other words, the Medusa demon could already use the swamp crocodile song to control a level 8 swamp crocodile. Moreover, this kind of control also changed from the previous submissive state to perfect control of any form. In other words, the Medusa's ability to control the swamp crocodiles had also improved. Lin Yuan raised his head and asked the Medusa demon, who had just become Grace's believer. Is the number of swamp crocodiles you control stronger than before? Lin Yuan asked this because he wanted to understand more about the scaled concubine's control over the marsh crocodiles. The scaled concubine hurriedly replied when she heard Lin Yuan's question. Previously, I could only control 200 to 300 swamp crocodiles at most, and I couldn't control more than 3 class 7 swamp crocodiles. And now, all the swamp crocodiles that hear my song will feel close to me and want to gather around me. I now have the ability to gather swamp crocodiles that is several times stronger than before. At the same time, the number of swamp crocodiles I can control has increased by at least 5 times. I should be able to control 1,000 swamp crocodiles without any pressure, but controlling 1,500 might be a little difficult. At the same time, I should be able to control 3 level 8 swamp crocodiles if there are no accidents. As for level 7 swamp crocodiles, I should be able to control dozens of them without any pressure. Hearing scaled concubine's words, Lin Yuan clapped his hands. This way, the marsh crocodile barrier at the edge of this land would become stronger. After looking at the time, Lin Yuan prepared to leave the marsh crocodile world. It was already around 3 a.m., and Lin Yuan let out a sigh. I've stayed up late again. Lin Yuan wanted to hand Wendy, who was sleeping soundly in his arms, to the scaled concubine and let her carry her. Recalling how the scaled concubine had not dared to carry Wendy before, Lin Yuan simply placed Wendy on Shiting's back. He let Shiting take care of Wendy. Shiting, who was also an apostle, would not have any fear of Wendy. The marsh world's internal land had been determined. Moreover, the defensive structures had also been established under the scaled concubine's talent, swamp crocodile song. However, this was far from Lin Yuan's goal of developing the marsh world. As for the resources to be used to develop the marsh world, Lin Yuan would have to think of a way from the main world. Lin Yuan left the slaughter sky butterfly in the marsh world while he returned to the Spirit Lock spatial zone. After returning to the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan took off his spirit chi clothes that were stained with a lot of swamp mud and left the Spirit Lock spatial zone. After exiting the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan planned to go downstairs and take advantage of the night to plan how to build the land in the center of the 3 mountains in the marsh world. When he arrived at the hall, Lin Yuan found Hu Quan making something on the table with his fingers. Beside him was the wood-weaving house centipede, which had been upgraded by Hu Quan. At this time, the main residence did not turn on the lights, but the spirit chi released by the 99.5 Fortune Ranches in the red sandalwood longevity fish tank caused the completely jade-textured furniture in the main residence's hall to emit a soft light. However, the light emitted by the completely jade-textured wood furniture in the main residence was far inferior to the object in Hu Quan's hand. Lin Yuan took a closer look and found that Hu Quan was weaving the various heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls with the completely jade-textured wood thread spat out by the wood-weaving house centipede. Lin Yuan saw a total of 24 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls of various elements being woven into an exquisite string of beads in Hu Quan's hands. This string of beads made Lin Yuan want to take it and play with it carefully. Hu Quan also saw Lin Yuan and waved the string of beads in his hand when Lin Yuan walked over. Lin Yuan, what do you think of this string of beads I made? Recently, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and the Heavenly Craft Pavilion are going to jointly hold a large-scale opening auction. I intend to put this string of beads made from 24 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls at the auction to show off. But I think ordinary people shouldn't be able to afford this string of beads made from heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls and my Class 5 spirit craftsmanship. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan gave Hu Quan a thumbs up and said, Uncle Hu's craftsmanship is really getting better and better. Uncle Hu's craftsmanship is getting better and better. These completely jade-textured wood threads are even softer than silk. Under Uncle Hu's weaving, these heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls without perforations are perfectly combined. Each knot exudes the unique noble aura of completely jade-textured wood. Not only did it not lower the grade of the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls, but it also lessened the heavy color of the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. At this point, Lin Yuan suddenly thought of something and said to Hu Quan, let's go. After saying that, Lin Yuan shook his hand and took out the brocade box that he had been carefully placing on the table in the spirit lock spatial zone. After saying that, Lin Yuan shook his hand and took out the brocade box that he had carefully placed on the table in the spirit lock spatial zone. When Hu Quan saw the item in the brocade box, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Even though he was a Class 5 spirit craftsman, he could not help but say with a trembling voice, Lin Yuan opened the brocade box in front of Hu Quan. When Hu Quan saw the item in the brocade box, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Lin Yuan, where did you get this brocade box of good stuff? Chapter 967. As a Class 5 spirit craftsman, Hu Quan came into contact with all kinds of precious spiritual materials to make luxury items every day and could be said to be experienced and knowledgeable. During his time under Lin Yuan, Hu Quan had become more and more picky with the choice of spiritual materials. Even the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls, which he would be surprised for a long time when he saw them in the past, could now be used to weave 24 of them at once. Even so, when he saw the things in Lin Yuan's brocade box, Hu Quan was still so shocked that even his voice became a little out of tune. He revealed an intoxicated expression and stared at the things in the brocade box in Lin Yuan's hand without blinking. Upon seeing Hu Quan's reaction, Lin Yuan did not find it strange. When Lin Yuan had seen these things, his reaction would not have been much better than Hu Quan's now. Otherwise, Lin Yuan would not have carefully collected these things in the brocade box. When Lin Yuan had been sorting out the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls in the spirit lock spatial zone, fixed fusheng was not the rarest type of pearl. Among them, there was a pearl that was far rarer than fixed fusheng. Almost all of the 1,000 elemental pearls produced by the 7 bronze/legend elemental shellfish in Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone were heavenly maiden-grade. Among them, about 400 to 500 elemental pearls had pearls. Among these 400 to 500 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls, 98% of the pearls were dreamy cloud lake pearls. Only 1 or 2 pearls would have fixed fusheng. As for pearl cores, which were even rarer than fixed fusheng, Lin Yuan had only collected such a small brocade box so far. Lin Yuan had not carefully checked the number of heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls in the brocade box, but there should be more than 100 of them. However, it was only a little more than 100, definitely not 110. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard Hu Quan's intoxicated and trembling voice. Lin Yuan, one of the 2 favors you asked me to help you is for me to use the elemental pearls for Lan Lanshan to make objects, right? Lin Yuan shook his head gently and said, there's no need to make objects. There's no need to go through so much trouble to make objects. The beads that Uncle Hu just weaved are pretty good. I want to use this pearl to weave Lan Lanshan's heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls into a long bead string. I can play with it when I'm bored. When Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan's words, he looked at Lin Yuan as though he was looking at an immortal and was speechless for a long time. If one were to say that the dreamy cloud swampland's multicolored effect made people feel as if they were in a great swamp where a myriad of dreams intersected, warm and moist. The fixed life bead was a type of bead that could stop the flow of life. The overall effect of the bead had a heavy texture, but it was also very solemn and dignified. This was also the reason why veteran and peak powers sought after the fixed life heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls. However, regardless of whether it was the dreamy cloud lake pearl or the tranquil life pearl, these two pearls only gave people a visual impact. However, Lan Lanshan's pearl essence was clearly of a much higher grade than dreamy cloud lakes and Ding Fusheng's. Just like its name, Lan Lanshan was able to evoke a feeling of, when you suddenly look back, that person is right there in the dim light, when you look at this elemental pearl. This kind of feeling was not as simple as the visual impact. It was a feeling that went straight to the bottom of his heart. Lan Lanshan's pearl essence felt no different from ordinary heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls. Although it had a trace of color compared to ordinary heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls, this trace of color was very faint. It had a feeling of being dreamy and hazy, and it was not easy for people to notice. However, if one looked elsewhere and inadvertently glanced at it, one would be able to see the most beautiful scenery. The most beautiful scenery would suddenly appear in one's heart in this faint pearl essence. Just a glance at it would make it hard for one not to feel joy. Hu Quan had only seen this kind of emotional level of pearl essence in books and had never seen the real thing. When he had seen the introduction of the pearl essence as a heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl, Hu Quan could not help but feel a little disdain. He had always felt that the introduction and the information was a little exaggerated. But now, Hu Quan simply wanted to call the person who wrote the information over and give him a good beating. What kind of bullshit was written? If you don't know how to write, then don't write. The description of the pearl as a heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl couldn't even compare to a tenth of its value. When Lin Yuan saw that Hu Quan wanted to touch it but did not dare to, he simply handed over the half-filled brocade box of heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls to Hu Quan. Lin Yuan had lived 2 lives, and this was the first time he wanted to take the initiative to make an object for him to play with. Hu Quan swallowed his saliva violently as he took the brocade box from Lin Yuan and carefully examined it one by one. After checking it, Hu Quan said to Lin Yuan again. Among the heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls in this brocade box, there are 27 water attribute pearls, 27 earth attribute pearls, 27 wind attribute pearls, and 26 fire attribute pearls. That's a total of 107. Hu Quan paused before continuing. Lin Yuan, you have so many heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls. You don't have to make a bracelet like the one I just made that can only be worn on the wrist. You can make it into a long string. However, 107 pearls are not an auspicious number, so it's not easy to make a string. If you make a string with 99 auspicious numbers, there will be 8 more heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls. The 99 pearls in the long string are only small auspicious, and 108 pearls are great auspicious, implying the perfection of the heavenly cycle. Lin Yuan, I don't know if you can get another heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl. If possible, it's best if it's a fire attribute one. This way, the 4 elemental pearls can be evenly arranged together. Of course, if there's no fire attribute, any other attribute will do. In short, gathering 108 pearls is the right thing to do. Upon hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan scratched his head. All kinds of luxury beads were very popular in the Radiance Federation, and there were many kinds of luxury beads. There were also all kinds of materials used, such as precious metals, plant fey seeds, rare stones, and jade-textured wood. There were even beads made of bones. Lin Yuan did not have any special understanding of this before, but he had seen the string of beads that Gao Feng had previously ground from a suzerain cetacean phase tooth core. Gao Feng's bead string had 108 pearls. Lin Yuan's current brocade box of heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls had been organized before he went to the Nyx assembly. It should not be difficult to find a heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl among this pile of new heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. The first one was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 968. He sank his thoughts into the spirit-lock spatial zone and commanded Genius and the wind-speed rapid antelope to search together. After some searching, he found that there were quite a few heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls in the spirit-lock spatial zone. It was just that there was no fire element in these few. Thus, Lin Yuan asked Genius and the wind-speed rapid antelope to continue searching. Moreover, he had already decided that if he really could not find the heavenly maiden elemental pearl that contained the fire-type pearl, Lan Lan Shan, he did not mind waiting for a period of time. When he had gathered 28 pills for each of the 4 elements, he would hand them over to Hu Quan. Since he was going to do it, he would do it to the best of his abilities. Otherwise, not only would Lin Yuan be dissatisfied, but he would also let down the 108 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls and Hu Quan's craftsmanship. The spirit-lock spatial zone had only been upgraded for half a day. However, in the past half a day, due to the increase in the purity and concentration of the spirit energy, the speed at which the elemental shellfish produced the elemental pearls had also greatly increased. Genius used its tiny claws to push away the last pile of heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. Suddenly, a fiery red pearl light entered Lin Yuan's eyes. The moment this fiery red pearl light shone into Lin Yuan's eyes, it was as though a goddess with a high bun flew out of the light and shadow. This fire attribute heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearl was bright and blazing, but it also had an indescribable ethereal quality to it. The faintly discernible image of the heavenly lady in the cloud dress gave the entire elemental pearl an extreme feeling. Lin Yuan had never seen this heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearl before. It should have appeared after the spirit chi's purity and concentration in the spirit-lock spatial zone increased. Coincidentally, this pearl contained a special heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearl of the fire attribute. It was a perfect match for the beads. Moreover, this heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearl contained a special fire attribute elemental pearl, which could serve as the finishing touch among the other heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. He immediately took it out of the spirit-lock spatial zone. When Hu Quan saw Lin Yuan's serious expression as he circulated his spiritual energy, he knew that he was looking for the resources in his hands. He wanted to see if he could find another heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearl. But then, a heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearl suddenly appeared in Lin Yuan's hand. Hu Quan couldn't help but cry out involuntarily. Within the elemental pearl, there was a goddess dressed in a high bun that appeared and disappeared. Damn! Is this the legendary Pearl Yun, the heavenly maiden Xian, which is said to be superior to Lan Lan Shan? It shouldn't be. Isn't it said that heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls with a purity of 100%? Lin Yuan, hurry up and tell me what other rare spiritual ingredients you don't have. Lin Yuan smiled upon hearing Hu Quan's words. Instead of answering Hu Quan's question, he changed the topic. Now we have 108 beads. Uncle Hu, what do you think about matching the Tian Nu Xian's beads with the Lan Lan Shan's? Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan immediately slapped his thigh, his eyes flashing. Previously, a whole string of heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls was already an excellent choice when paired together. Now that it's woven into a string of pearls, the feeling of hundreds of waning colors will immediately reach the bottom of my heart. However, the feeling of those 100 kinds of waning colors cannot compare to the feeling of having a heavenly maiden companion behind them. If I have to say the difference, the Lan Lan Shan previously only expressed emotions. Now that the Tian Nu Xian has been added, the entire string of 100 kinds of waning colors has a theme. It's like drawing a painting with a dragon on it, giving the dragon the feeling of coming to life. Lin Yuan nodded and replied, "Then I'll have to trouble you, Uncle Hu." Then I'll have to trouble you, Uncle Hu. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan looked at the brocade box in his hand and suddenly felt a little reluctant. Lin Yuan, I can actually weave a bead for you now. According to the weaving method just now, I'll be able to weave it before dawn tomorrow. However, this kind of weaving method is really not worthy of the 108 peerless treasures you gave me. I plan to complete the general design and construction of the underground space at hand. Then I'll get my little fellows to complete the construction according to my requirements. I'll also enter seclusion and use my strongest spirit craftsman's strength to complete the weaving of this string of beads without any distractions. This string of beads is very likely to be the most precious thing I'll weave in my life. Upon hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly. He knew that Hu Quan now had the same feeling when he had created the red sandalwood longevity fish tank. Lin Yuan naturally would not object to Hu Quan's decision to enter seclusion. However, he felt that there was something wrong with what Hu Quan had said. Uncle Hu, there will never be a time when good things like us reach their peak. I believe that both the rare spiritual ingredients and Uncle Hu's spirit craftsmanship will definitely be able to reach a higher level. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan laughed out loud. When he had been a Class 4 spirit craftsman, Hu Quan had always thought that Class 5 spirit craftsmen were the peak of spirit craftsmen. However, when he really became a Class 5 spirit craftsman, Hu Quan knew how big the gap between them was. Take Hu Quan for example. He was a newly advanced Class 5 spirit craftsman. No matter how talented he was, he definitely could not compare to those old fellows who had been Class 5 spirit craftsmen for decades in terms of craftsmanship and ability. At the Class 5 spirit craftsman level, Hu Quan began to slowly slack off. Anyway, Class 5 was already the peak. Even if there was a gap in strength between Class 5 spirit craftsmen, he was still at the peak of spirit craftsman. However, after listening to Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan felt that his previous thoughts had fallen into the wrong direction. As a spirit craftsman who spoke with skills, how could he not have the heart to improve? Hu Quan, who suddenly understood, looked at the 107 Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls in the brocade box again, as well as the Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearl that was at the top of all the other Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls. He felt that many thoughts had appeared in his mind. Hu Quan felt that he should go to Master Hong Shen and ask him to help him improve his wood-weaving house centipede. At that time, he could try the weaving method that he had not been able to do before. After Hu Quan calmed down, he said to Lin Yuan, how is this asking for my help? Lin Yuan, how are you asking for my help? You're clearly doing me a great favor. The first thing is over. What's the second thing you want to talk about? Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan asked Hu Quan. Uncle Hu, have you heard of the swamp world? Hu Quan was slightly startled and immediately replied, I've definitely heard of the swamp world. I've definitely heard of the swamp world. Could it be that the second favor you asked me for is related to the swamp world? Lin Yuan nodded in response. Uncle Hu, the thing I'm looking for your help is indeed related to the swamp world. I want to borrow some spirit craftsmen from you who can take charge. The second thing was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 969. Lin Yuan wanted to get some spirit craftsmen from Hu Quan who could stand on their own. Then, he used the treasure cave golden toad's skin and stomach to bring these people into the swamp world. The land in the three mountains was constructed. Lin Yuan was able to ensure that these people did not know about the spirit lock spatial zone's existence after being stored in the golden toad's stomach and skin artifact. But in the swamp world, anyone with the slightest bit of intelligence would be able to guess where they were, and there was no way to hide it. When Hu Quan heard that it involved the swamp world, he knew that this matter should be of great importance. Hu Quan didn't ask much and immediately said, There are more than 500 spirit craftsmen in the Heavenly Craft Pavilion now. Most of these spirit craftsmen are Class 3 spirit craftsmen and can hold their own. I'll have a meeting with these bastards tomorrow during the day. I just don't know if young master has any other requirements for these little bastards other than being able to take charge on their own. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan pondered slightly. Lin Yuan did not have a rigid requirement. His purpose of borrowing spirit craftsmen from Hu Quan was to let them complete their own jobs and carry out construction and creation. However, these Class 3 spirit craftsmen had to work in the swamp world. Without the restrictions of the contract, the hearts of men could not be separated from the belly, and the swamp world was a matter of great importance. Not even the slightest hint of it could be leaked. Therefore, he did not intend to release these spirit craftsmen who had entered the swamp world to work in a short time. However, Lin Yuan would not compensate these spirit craftsmen for sacrificing their freedom. Uncle Hu, I only have one request for these spirit craftsmen apart from being independent. You have to be able to endure loneliness and avoid the world." Upon hearing that, Hu Quan frowned slightly. At that moment, Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan continue. "Therefore, it's best for Uncle Hu to choose a spirit craftsman who doesn't have parents, wife, or children. Of course, as the price for avoiding the world, I can provide these spirit craftsmen with all the bronze/epic phase they need to contract for life. In addition, all the daily necessities will be distributed according to a higher standard." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan roughly knew Lin Yuan's purpose and plan. However, Hu Quan felt that given Lin Yuan's conditions, even those spirit craftsmen who had parents, wives, and children in the real world would find it hard to refuse. Even if a Class 4 spirit craftsman worked hard and used his entire life savings, it would be very difficult to find a creation master to customize a few bronze/epic phase. It could be said that Lin Yuan's promise was equivalent to giving these spirit craftsmen a lifetime guarantee. Normally, when spirit craftsmen were hired, they would receive different salaries and treatments according to their ranks. In addition to the bronze/epic phase provided by Lin Yuan, these spirit craftsmen who were asked to live in seclusion would also receive a higher treatment. In other words, as long as a Class 3 spirit craftsman worked for Lin Yuan in seclusion, he would receive the salary of a Class 4 spirit craftsman every day. If a Class 4 spirit craftsman worked for him, he would receive the salary of a Class 5 spirit craftsman every day. Such a salary would allow the spirit craftsmen who secluded themselves from the world to work for Lin Yuan to accumulate massive wealth. At that thought, Hu Quan asked Lin Yuan, "Lin Yuan, do these spirit craftsmen need to live in seclusion forever?" Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and shook his head. "It should take at least 10 years to hide from the world. After 10 years, there is no need to hide from the world anymore. 10 years was enough for him to grow and develop in the swamp world. Therefore, 10 years of seclusion would be enough to achieve his goal." Moreover, he believed that these spirit craftsmen who had entered the swamp world to work for him would be extremely loyal to him during these 10 years. Upon hearing that, Hu Quan felt that he wanted to sign up. 10 years of seclusion in exchange for a lifetime supply of epic phase was like a meat pie falling from the sky. In the era of the revival of spirit energy, human beings had become long-lived. 10 years was nothing in one's entire life. "Lin Yuan, isn't the reward too high for 10 years of seclusion? With such conditions, I think anyone who isn't stupid would choose to participate." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan replied to Hu Quan, "Uncle Hu, I want to take advantage of this seclusion to nurture a batch of phase for Sky City and the Heavenly Craft Pavilion and equip them with top-notch spirit craftsmen. The most important thing about these spirit craftsmen is absolute loyalty. Therefore, Uncle Hu doesn't need to mention 10 years of seclusion." Hu Quan understood Lin Yuan's intention and thought to himself, "I wonder which little bastard will be able to obtain such a great opportunity in tomorrow's meeting." After discussing with Hu Quan, Lin Yuan returned to his room. Upon returning to his room, Lin Yuan found that Chimey had turned into a fae and was lying in the middle of his big bed with its limbs spread out. It didn't look like it was sleeping at all. Lin Yuan gently carried Chimey and placed it on the pillow. Then, he summoned Genius, who was dozing off in the spirit lock spatial zone. He lifted the blanket and gently covered Genius and Chimey. Looking at the faintly brightening sky, Lin Yuan simply logged into the star web. He began to prepare to purchase venomous snake species phase for Wendy. Lin Yuan headed straight for the rare life form pavilion and started to sweep up the snake phase that were being auctioned. Lin Yuan only adhered to 2 principles when it came to sweeping up the snake phase. One principle was to be venomous, and the other principle was to be good-looking. Each of these snake phase had to be fused by Wendy, and the fused venomous snakes would become a strand of Wendy's snake hair. Therefore, Lin Yuan didn't want the cute Wendy's snake hair to be so ugly. There were plenty of snake phase in the Star Web's rare life form pavilion, and Lin Yuan quickly swept up over a dozen. After sweeping up the snake phase, Lin Yuan logged out of the Star Web and leaned against the side of the bed. He wrapped his arms around Chimey and Genius to take a nap. Lin Yuan still had to wait until the next morning before entering the swamp world with endless summer. He was going to plant the sacred source life form, the Arakawa orchid, in the area marked by the ethereal jellyfish's tentacle. At the same time, he was going to prepare some high-grade phase essence blood and scatter it into the swamp. He was going to attract the swamp crocodiles for the Medusa snake demon to control. Bang! 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 The rhythmic sounds of percussion rang out in an unusually luxurious study room. Every piece of furniture in this study room exuded the dignity of a rich and powerful family, which was low-key and not ostentatious. Upon hearing the rhythmic sounds, a dispirited woman couldn't help but say, "Dad, stop hitting. Joie's soul has already been severely injured and hasn't recovered. If you continue to hit, Joie will die." Upon hearing the woman's words, the tall elder with white hair and a white beard that reached his chest swung the vase even faster. He looked like he was going to beat Joie to death. At the same time, the tall elder with white hair and a white beard that reached his chest turned around and glared at the dispirited woman. He scolded, "Who was the one who confidently said that he and the bamboo monarch had a chance? And who gave you the guts to imitate the bamboo monarch's crown pattern?" Upon hearing the elder's words, Miao Qi's dispirited face suddenly turned ice cold. He frowned and looked at the elder. "Dad, no one knows better than you what I'm wearing to the Nix assembly and why I'm here. Don't forget that you were the one who appointed me to represent the Miao family's beast creation garden to attend the Nix conference. I'm responsible for what happened, but I can't bear all the responsibility." Chapter 3 Sad face. End of this chapter. Chapter 970. While speaking, Miao Qi's face revealed a cold expression as he looked at the tall elder with white hair and beard that reached his chest. At that moment, Miao Qi's words did not contain the respect he should have for his father, who was the current head of the beast creation garden. Upon hearing Miao Qi's words, the tall elder let out a cold snort, but he did not say anything else. The vase in his hand rose and fell even faster as it ruthlessly smashed towards Miao Zhuo's body. Miao Zhuo's forehead was dripping with cold sweat, and his body was trembling in pain, but he did not dare to use his hands to block. He was afraid that using his hands to block would infuriate the elder and result in an even more violent beating. As a pinnacle Class 4 creation master, Miao Qi was a true core member of the Beast Creation Garden. Even if Miao Qi was the elder's daughter and the current head of the Beast Creation Garden, he still had to consider Miao Qi's feelings. Seeing that the elder was hitting Miao Zhuo with even more force, Miao Qi could not bear to watch any longer. "Dad, even if Zhuo's soul spirit was severely injured, he is still a pinnacle Class 3 creation master. A young pinnacle Class 3 creation master is the family's wealth. Are you going to beat him to death just like that? Now that it's happened, you've already vented your anger. You should think about how to remedy the situation and not keep venting your anger on Miao Zhuo." When talking about remedy, the domineering Miao Qi's voice had a slight tremble. Although Miao Qi and Miao Zhuo had been chased out of the Nix assembly, the elder group of the Miao family still heard about what had happened during the Nix assembly. Miao Qi had naturally heard about it too. Miao Qi did not expect Wang Fuxiang's misfortune physique to have such a severe impact on the Class 5 creation master, Bamboo Monarch. Back in Night Glory Palace, Miao Qi had been extremely weak in front of Wang Fuxiang. This was because Miao Qi did not have the capital to be domineering. Miao Qi knew that Bamboo Monarch liked Wang Fuxiang. Even so, Miao Qi still dared to talk back to Wang Fuxiang when facing Miao Zhuo. He wanted to dig a hole for Wang Fuxiang. However, when Bamboo Monarch's disciple, Xia Chen, personally acknowledged Wang Fuxiang's status, Miao Qi did not dare to say anything. Miao Qi's confrontation with Wang Fuxiang in Yeyang Palace and his expulsion from Yeyang Palace could be considered the greatest humiliation of his life. This caused Miao Qi to lose face in front of so many veteran and peak forces leaders. He was afraid that even the juniors of the various families knew about this matter, and he had become the laughing stock of others during their leisure time. How could Miao Qi not hate him? Miao Qi hoped that Bamboo Monarch's condition would worsen. As long as the Bamboo Monarch's condition worsened, Wang Fuxiang, who had affected the bamboo monarch, would definitely die. Miao Qi dared to openly pursue bamboo monarch because she had once researched a topic under bamboo monarch and helped him a little. The bamboo monarch had always been a gentle person. As long as he and the Miao family did not provoke Wang Fuxiang in the future, the bamboo monarch would not dare to provoke her. The bamboo monarch probably wouldn't do anything to the Miao family in the open. At most, Wang Fuxiang would use the bamboo monarch's name to suppress the Miao family. The Miao family's beast creation garden's function was in terms of creation masters. Even if the creation masters' functions were suppressed, it wouldn't affect them much. Therefore, apart from some humiliation, the confrontation between Miao Qi and Wang Fuxiang wouldn't have much of an impact. However, he didn't expect Zhuo to find trouble with Sun Ningxiang out of nowhere. It was fine if he went to find trouble with Sun Ningxiang, but it was common when the juniors of the various aristocratic families gathered together. As long as the consequences weren't too severe, the major factions wouldn't be too concerned. However, Miao Qi had never expected that Miao Zhuo would actually be so disrespectful to the Moon Empress disciple and point at her nose. At the same time, he had caused the chief guard's disciple to be annoyed. Because of Miao Zhuo's actions, the Du family's Hearthstone Metals and the Fang family's Four-Legged Beast Region's collaboration with the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden was cancelled. It was said that after the Du family's Hearthstone Metals and the Fang family's Four-Legged Beast Region cancelled their collaboration with the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden, they immediately went to the Long family's Coiled Dragon Valley. The Long family's Coiled Dragon Valley and the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden had always been enemies. Moreover, the Long family's Coiled Dragon Valley had always suppressed the Beast Creation Garden. The Miao family had been chasing after the Coiled Dragon Valley's footsteps for so many years and had even set their sights on the Du Immortal Nursery, which was also a top-notch faction. Under such circumstances, because of Miao Zhuo's rash actions, the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden's newly established ally was handed over to the Coiled Dragon Valley. On one hand, it was equivalent to weakening the Miao family's current connections in the Beast Creation Garden. On the other hand, it also increased the Long family's connections in the Coiled Dragon Valley. At the thought of this, Miao Qi would have kicked Miao Zhuo a few times if he hadn't seen Miao Zhuo covered in wounds. Rumor had it that the Miao family's elder council was very concerned about the golden lotus stalk, which was in the hands of the Moon Empress. At the critical juncture when the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden was preparing to visit the Moon Empress and see if they could ask for a golden lotus stalk, Miao Zhuo being disrespectful to the Moon Empress disciple was equivalent to being disrespectful to the Radiant Moon Palace. Under such circumstances, the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden didn't dare to go to the Leaning Moon Mountain to ask for the golden lotus stalk. Given the Moon Empress' temper, she might even suppress the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden in the future. At that moment, Miao Qi heard his father, Miao Zhinshan, say, "Remedy? How?" The elder council discussed for an entire afternoon and couldn't think of a remedy. Even if they thought of a remedy, who would dare to go to the Leaning Moon Mountain? All the top-notch factions are watching the Miao family's Beast Creation Gardens show now. Even the top-notch factions that are allies of the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden are clearly distancing themselves today. If this matter isn't resolved perfectly, I'm afraid the future cooperation will be affected. By then, the worst-case scenario would be to break off the cooperation. Even if the situation is better and we keep breaking off the cooperation, the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden will still be in a weak position. This is all because of this little bastard. Miao Zhinshan's words made Miao Qi speechless. Miao Qi didn't know how to refute Miao Zhuo's divine manipulation. At that moment, Zheng Kaiyuan, who was standing in the house, had an idea. He stepped forward and said, "Grandpa, Master, I might have a solution for this matter." Seeing Zheng Kaiyuan suddenly speak, Miao Zhinshan and Miao Qi frowned and wanted to reprimand him. However, when they thought about the contents of the Elder Council's investigation of the Nix Assembly, Miao Zhinshan and Miao Qi didn't reprimand him. However, Miao Zhinshan and Miao Qi didn't take Zheng Kaiyuan's words seriously. The whole Miao family was in a terrible predicament because of this matter. As a junior, what solution could Zheng Kaiyuan have? The first one was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 971. Both of them had watched Zheng Kaiyuan grow up, and Zheng Kaiyuan was indeed outstanding as a creation master. Otherwise, Miao Qi wouldn't have accepted him as a disciple and nurtured him. Even so, Zheng Kaiyuan wasn't qualified to stand in the circle of Her Majesty's disciples. As a veteran faction, the Zheng family wasn't qualified to attend a grand event like the Nix conference. Zheng Kaiyuan was only able to attend the Nix conference because of Miao Ji. It could be said that Zheng Kaiyuan didn't even know who Her Majesty's disciple was. Therefore, even if Zheng Kaiyuan didn't know the reason why he was standing with Her Majesty's disciple, it didn't mean anything. However, Miao Zhinshan, who couldn't think of a solution, still asked Zheng Kaiyuan. "Kaiyuan, do you have a solution?" Zheng Kaiyuan stepped forward and puffed out his chest. "Whoever started the trouble should end it. Since this matter happened to the Moon Empress disciple, Lin Yuan, it was Miao Zhua who offended Lord Lin Yuan. As long as Miao Zhua can obtain Lord Lin Yuan's forgiveness, the Moon Empress probably won't look into this matter." Lord Lin Yuan wore the moonlight regalia that competed with the Moon Empress during the Nix conference. It shows how much the Moon Empress values Lord Lin Yuan. The golden lotus brocade that appeared at the royal capital's Fey Observer Guild was also taken out by Lord Lin Yuan. This means that Lord Lin Yuan definitely has something like the golden lotus brocade. If we can build a good relationship with Lord Lin Yuan, it shouldn't be difficult to obtain the golden lotus brocade. Hearing Zheng Kaiyuan's boasting, Miao Zhinshan and Miao Qi revealed contemplative expressions. They seemed to be considering the feasibility of Zheng Kaiyuan's solution. Miao Zhua, who was beaten up, glared at Zheng Kaiyuan with malicious eyes. As a core member of the younger generation of the elite faction, Beast Creation Garden, Miao Zhua was very proficient in the art of speech. Zheng Kaiyuan had already summarized the entire matter when he said that whoever started the trouble should end it. However, in such a situation, Zheng Kaiyuan still had to mention that he offended Lin Yuan. Zheng Kaiyuan didn't have to say it, but saying it now was the same as stepping on him. Miao Zhua believed that he had been taking good care of his cousin, Zheng Kaiyuan. Now that he was in such a miserable state, there was basically no possibility of him making a comeback. Under such circumstances, why was Zheng Kaiyuan still trying to step on him? It could be said that Zheng Kaiyuan had poured cold water on Miao Zhua when he was in dire straits. Miao Zhua sneered in his heart. No matter what, his surname was Miao, and Zheng Kaiyuan's surname was Zheng. Even if he made a mistake, there was no possibility of turning things around. After all, he was still a direct descendant of the younger generation of the Miao family. If he wanted to make a move on Zheng Kaiyuan, he could do it without anyone knowing. At this moment, Miao Zhua saw Zheng Kaiyuan take 2 steps forward and stand beside him. During this time, Miao Zhua also saw Zheng Kaiyuan turn his head and glance at him. At this moment, Miao Zhua felt that Zheng Kaiyuan was looking at him as if he was looking at a servant. "Grandpa, Master, before going to the Nix assembly, Mother told me to make more friends, and I'm very good at making friends. When I was standing with Lord Lin Yuan, I even left Lord Lin Yuan's phone number." Upon hearing Zheng Kaiyuan's words, Miao Zhinshan and Miao Qi were both surprised and pleasantly surprised. They looked at Zheng Kaiyuan and felt that it was their first time meeting him. Miao Zhinshan personally walked in front of Zheng Kaiyuan and placed his hand on Zheng Kaiyuan's shoulder. "Grandson, don't be in a hurry to return to Indigo Azure City's Zheng family for the next few days. I'll ask someone to bring Xiaoji over. Give me the Moon Empress disciple's phone number first. The Elders' Council will discuss and decide how to contact the Moon Empress disciple. If you have time these 2 days, you might as well walk around with the Moon Empress disciple. If you need anything while walking around, you can choose from the gifts in the Beast Creation Garden's treasury." Miao Zhua had never expected that Zheng Kaiyuan would have the Moon Empress disciple's phone number. If that was really the case, then he really could not do anything to Zheng Kaiyuan. In fact, he would even have to rely on Zheng Kaiyuan to live in the future. At this thought, Miao Zhua's mood immediately became complicated. He could not understand what Zheng Kaiyuan had done to get Lin Yuan's phone number after he had been chased out of the outer palace. Compared to Miao Zhua's complicated mood, Zheng Kaiyuan was also very agitated. In Zheng Kaiyuan's impression, his grandfather usually addressed him as Kaiyuan, the person closest to him. He had never called him his grandson. Furthermore, ever since his mother, Miao Ji, had married into the Jing family, his grandfather had always been unhappy. He had not allowed his mother to return to the Jing family for many years. Even during the New Year, when his mother called his grandfather to greet him, no one would pick up the phone even after the call ended. He did not expect that his grandfather would actually allow his mother to return to the Miao family. This was equivalent to fulfilling his mother's wish for many years. His grandfather's change in attitude toward him was one thing. At the same time, his grandfather allowed him to take any gift from the Beast Creation Garden's treasury. Any gift that was qualified to be placed in the Beast Creation Garden's treasury was worth 1,000 taels of gold. Any random item in the Beast Creation Garden's treasury was something that he would never be able to come into contact with in the Jing family. Since he was given the right to take any gift from the Beast Creation Garden's treasury, then even if he did not interact with Lin Yuan, he just needed to find an excuse to take any resources. In Zheng Kaiyuan's heart, these tangible benefits were much more important than Miao Zhinshan's attitude toward him. Originally, Zheng Kaiyuan already had ambitions in his heart during the Great Nix Assembly. At that moment, Zheng Kaiyuan suddenly had a feeling that the entire Miao family had to rely on him. When Zheng Kaiyuan looked at Miao Zhua and even his master, Miao Qi, he could not help but feel that they were not worthy of his attention. However, even if Zheng Kaiyuan had the guts, he wouldn't dare to interact with Lin Yuan more often. This was because Zheng Kaiyuan had never contacted Lin Yuan in private. But no matter what, Lin Yuan was the one who had contacted him, so there was no mistake. When Zheng Kaiyuan thought of his current treatment, he could not help but feel grateful to Lin Yuan from the bottom of his heart. Zheng Kaiyuan also had a small plan in his heart. "Grandfather, I'll leave everything to you. If you need my help, I'm always willing to help. According to my observation, Lord Lin Yuan's temper is not good. Therefore, you must show your sincerity when preparing gifts." Zheng Kaiyuan knew that he was being valued so much now because of Lin Yuan's phone number. Chapter 972. Therefore, Zheng Kaiyuan knew how to package himself. In his grandfather's eyes, the more familiar he was with Lin Yuan and the better his relationship with Lin Yuan, the more benefits he could obtain. Only by bad-mouthing Lin Yuan's temper would his grandfather take out more sincerity from the treasury. By then, he might even be able to take a few items from this large amount of sincerity without anyone noticing. In the next hour, Zheng Kaiyuan felt that he had reached the peak of his life. During this hour, Zheng Kaiyuan constantly received praise from Miao Zhinshan and Miao Qi. It made Zheng Kaiyuan feel that he was the Miao family's young master. Meanwhile, Miao Zhuo was like his dog, so pitiful and helpless. An hour later, Zheng Kaiyuan straightened his back and left Miao Zhinshan's study. Miao Zhuo used both hands to cover the injuries caused by the vase and limped behind Zheng Kaiyuan. He looked a little down and out. Miao Zhuo walked quickly with a complicated expression and walked to Zheng Kaiyuan's side. "Cousin, I don't know." Before Miao Zhuo could finish speaking, he saw Zheng Kaiyuan take a step toward him. He hit the wound on his shoulder and said arrogantly, "Don't call me cousin. Don't call me cousin, just call me by my name. Miao Zhuo, after you offended Lord Lin Yuan and were chased out of Yeyang Palace, Lord Lin Yuan told me that he wanted to settle the score with you. I said a few words on your behalf before Lord Lin Yuan let it go. Tell me, what are you going to give me back?" Miao Zhuo's expression became increasingly complicated when he heard Zheng Kaiyuan's words. Miao Zhuo remembered that when Zheng Kaiyuan had just arrived from the Jing family and learned creation master knowledge from his aunt, he had been very sweet to him. Zheng Kaiyuan would be full of smiles when he replied to him as cousin. But now, the world had changed, and it was as though he had committed a huge mistake by calling him cousin. Miao Zhuo was not a fool. When he had met Lin Yuan in a hurry at the Nix assembly, he knew that Lin Yuan was a good-tempered person. Otherwise, the one who had attacked him would not have been Chief Guard Ye's disciple but Lin Yuan. As the Moon Empress disciple, Lin Yuan did not settle the score with him in person, so he certainly would not have the leisure to settle the score with him later. Therefore, Zheng Kaiyuan's words about Lin Yuan's bad temper were all lies. However, at this time, Miao Zhuo did not have the ability or qualifications to expose Zheng Kaiyuan. Miao Zhuo took a deep breath. Kaiyuan, how do you want me to repay you? Zheng Kaiyuan snorted when he heard that. Miao Zhuo, I heard that Elder Lu, who is always by your side to protect you, has reached the peak of the Emperor stage. My two fays have reached the pinnacle of Myth 3. I wonder if cousin can lend me Elder Lu. Miao Zhuo's expression froze when he heard Zheng Kaiyuan's words. His eyes were fixed on Zheng Kaiyuan, but his tone was still gentle. What does Kaiyuan want to see Elder Lu for? Elder Lu hasn't fought for a year. Currently, Elder Lu is accumulating his foundation and preparing to let one of his fays get involved in the world creation tribulation. Miao Zhuo thought that his refusal was very clear, but he didn't expect Zheng Kaiyuan to continue as if he didn't hear his refusal. Since it's not convenient for Elder Lu to make a move, Miao Zhuo, lend me the other 4 Emperor-class experts under you. Elder Lu won't have to make a move then. He just needs to hold the line. That's right. I remember that you seem to have an opinion about Sky City, Miao Zhuo. I'm borrowing Elder Lu from you this time because I want to uproot the entire Sky City by attacking the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. You won't refuse me to go against Sky City, right? But if you have to refuse, I can only look for Grandpa and see if he can help me put in a good word. I think if Grandpa asks, Miao Zhuo, you won't refuse me again, right? Miao Zhuo didn't expect Zheng Kaiyuan's words to have him in the bag. Zheng Kaiyuan's words made it impossible for Miao Zhuo to refuse. Miao Zhuo said with a tense expression. Kaiyuan, you can make your own decision on this matter. Everyone in the Miao family knows about my current situation, and I don't have the face to command these Emperor-class experts under me. Therefore, Kaiyuan, you might as well tell Grandpa about this matter. You might even be able to borrow more manpower. If Grandpa agrees, won't my subordinates be at your disposal? After saying that, Miao Zhuo turned around and limped forward. His back view looked extremely bleak. Zheng Kaiyuan looked at Miao Zhuo's back view and said in disdain, ignorant. You don't know what's good for you. Then, Zheng Kaiyuan turned around and walked toward the study room again. In the next few days, Zheng Kaiyuan was preparing to use the Miao family's power to uproot the entire Sky City. Otherwise, Nightmare VI's death would always be hanging over Zheng Kaiyuan's head like a sharp sword. It made Zheng Kaiyuan feel that someone was spying on him from behind, and he couldn't eat or sleep in peace. Inside the Return from Faraway Manor's master bedroom, Lin Yuan realized that it was already past 8:00 when he woke up. Genius and Chimey, which had been obediently staying in his arms last night, had already burrowed into his silk pajamas. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In order not to wake Chimey and Genius, he simply unbuttoned his pajamas and gently took them off. Then, he changed into waterproof spirit chi clothes and shoes before walking out of the room. After walking out of the room, he saw Lu Pinru and Wenyu flipping through the blueprints on the second floor's attic. The blueprints were all kinds of clothing designs for Lu Pinru and Wenyu. He found that Wenyu and Lu Pinru's clothing designs were very similar, and they were both relatively simple. At that moment, Wenyu said, "We want to mass-produce these spirit chi clothes. We want to mass-produce these spiritual chi clothes. In order to control the quality of the spiritual chi clothes, we can buy a few clothing factories. We can also arrange for Class 2 weavers in every position in these clothing factories. However, if we want to make a name for ourselves, it's not enough to rely on these ordinary spirit chi clothes. Therefore, I think we should launch the advanced customization business. In this regard, I plan to hire a Class 5 weaver who is good at tailoring clothes and a Class 5 weaver who is good at drawing. Let these 2 Class 5 weavers be in charge of the advanced customization business." Upon hearing Wenyu's words, Lu Pinru had a face of admiration. She was very good at designing and producing spirit chi clothes. However, when it came to managing a brand, Lu Pinru felt that she was far inferior to Wenyu. Although Wenyu was good at resource allocation, she was actually not that cunning when it came to managing a brand. When you had learned so many ideas from Lin Yuan's private territory management. Lin Yuan did not disturb Wen Yu and Lu Pinru. Instead, he went downstairs to the living room and sat beside Endless Summer. When Endless Summer saw Lin Yuan go downstairs, she asked with anticipation, "Lin Yuan, when are we going to the place you mentioned?" "Lin Yuan, when are we going to the place you mentioned?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan took out his cell phone and replied, "Lin Yuan, when are we going to the place you mentioned?" After saying that, Lin Yuan took out his cell phone and replied, "I asked Listen to come over to deliver something. When it arrives, we'll set off." After thinking about it, Lin Yuan decided to ask Listen to prepare some carrion-eating phase essence blood. Since carrion-eating phase fed on decaying things, their blood had a strong resistance to carrion-eating fungi. Using these carrion-eating phase essence blood, Lin Yuan could attract enough marsh crocodiles at once. After getting dozens of buckets of the tunnel rat's essence blood from Listen, Lin Yuan let Endless Summer enter the artifact made of the treasure cave golden toad's skin and stomach sac. Then, Lin Yuan entered the spirit lock spatial zone with the artifact made of the treasure cave golden toad's skin and skin. When he entered the swamp world through the Klein hub, Lin Yuan found that the originally calm swamp world had changed. Looking at the lizard Ting, who had 4 broken heads and was seriously injured on the ground, as well as the scaled concubine and Wendy, whose fate was unknown, Lin Yuan's anger suddenly surged. Feeling the violent energy fluctuations above his head, Lin Yuan looked up at the sky. He saw the predator butterfly in a confrontation with a strange-looking dimensional creature. Third. End of this chapter. Chapter 973. Lin Yuan saw that this strange dimensional life form was not big and was only the size of a human head. However, the pressure emitted by this strange swamp dimensional creature the size of a human head was enough to match the slaughtering butterfly. The slaughter sky butterfly was already a Suzerain X first creation tribulation Fae. It had yet to successfully advance from Suzerain Class 10 to Monarch Class 1. However, the killer butterfly was one of the 3 supreme bloodlines of butterfly species Faes and grasped the power world transformed from the power law. The power world, which was a pure offensive law world, allowed the killer butterfly to have the capital to fight even Monarch Class 1 creation lineage Faes. The pressure emitted by the strange swamp dimensional creature the size of a human head was comparable to the predator butterfly. This meant that the swamp dimensional creature's strength was about the same as the predator butterfly's. It might even be a bit stronger than the killer butterfly. Otherwise, Shiteng, Wendy, and the Class 6 Medusa would not be in such a situation where their lives were uncertain under the killer butterfly's protection. Lin Yuan did not know the state of the Class 6 Medusa and Shiteng. However, based on his spiritual energy connection with Wendy, Lin Yuan could be sure that she was still alive. This could be considered a blessing in misfortune. If Wendy died, then Lin Yuan's spiritual energy would be damaged, and the damaged spiritual energy would cause him to suffer from headaches for a long time. It would also affect the use of other Faes. Moreover, the loss of spiritual energy due to the death of a Fae could not be recovered. This would undoubtedly make Lin Yuan's spiritual energy, which he could not control too much, enter a state of one disaster after another. The killer butterfly was now a Suzerain Class 10 creation tribulation, and its strength was comparable to a Class 10 dimensional life form. This strange dimensional life form the size of a human head could faintly suppress the killer butterfly, indicating that its strength should be around Class 11. Lin Yuan looked at the ferocious strange bird with sarcomas on its head and body. The sarcomas were covered with fine snake scales, and a few feathers were faintly growing on the snake scales. Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check this strange bird. Alien beast name, drinking venom snake vulture, life form, dimensional life form, blessed believer, alien beast rank, class 11, totem belief, remnant body exquisite totem innate skills frowny face poison congealing heart. While devouring poisonous substances to increase one's strength, one can condense the devoured poison in one's heart and modify the heart. For types of poisonous blood with different effects will be condensed in 2 atriums and 2 ventricles. At the same time, when he swallowed the Medusa monster's hair, he could use a special protein in the Medusa monster's hair to increase his heart's capacity for venom and assimilate the venom in the heart into the Medusa monster's hair that had a petrifying effect. Upon seeing the attributes of the swamp-dimensional life form, Lin Yuan's expression turned even gloomier. He never expected that he had guessed correctly. This water-drinking snake vulture was really a Class 11-dimensional creature. A Class 11-dimensional life-form strength was already vaguely equivalent to a creation I-Fey. Such strength was beyond the scope of a Class 5-dimensional rift. Even a Class 5-dimensional rift would at most have Class 10-dimensional lifeforms. Furthermore, this water-drinking snake vulture wasn't just a simple dimensional creature. It was also a believer of an apostle. Its totem was the remnant body exquisite totem. At the same time, the water-drinking snake vulture's innate skill, poison congealing heart, determined that it was a dimensional life form that used poison as its main attack method. Such dimensional life forms were the most difficult to deal with. As long as one's body absorbed a trace of poison, it would be severely affected. As a result, its combat strength would be greatly weakened. Upon seeing that the butchering sky butterfly's milky blue wings were a little dim, Lin Yuan knew that the butchering sky butterfly had used a lot of the scale powder on its wings to resist the poison of the water-drinking snake vulture. The scale powder had always been very important to butterfly species phase. The scale powder wasn't just a means of control and attack for butterfly species phase, but it could also increase their flying speed. The creation breed butchering sky butterfly was considered a Fey that excelled in speed. After losing the scale powder, the butchering sky butterfly's speed would slow down. It would be more vulnerable to the Class 11-dimensional creature, the water-drinking snake vulture. Just as Lin Yuan took out the artifact made from the treasure cave golden toad's skin and stomach pouch and was about to release the Class 1 creation I monarch, Endless Summer, the Class 11-dimensional creature, the water-drinking snake vulture, used an abnormally sharp voice to speak in the swamp world's language. I originally wanted to eat the hair of the Medusa demon that had been luring the swamp crocodiles at the edge of the swamp. I didn't expect to have such a great harvest. Little butterfly, you can't stop me. Don't think that you can protect the safety of those two apostles. I just didn't kill them. Otherwise, these two apostles would have turned into a pile of bones under my poison. These two apostles must be mine. I'm going to take them back and offer them to Lady Ling Long. While speaking, the water-drinking snake vulture flapped its wings and waved out four-colored poisonous gases. These four-colored poisonous gases formed four 300 feet long giant snakes in the air and crashed toward the butchering sky butterfly. The butchering sky butterfly hurriedly turned into milky blue butterfly shadows that filled the sky, but the four 300 feet long giant snakes also split into millions of small snakes. The four-colored small snakes attacked the milky blue butterfly shadows together. Finally, in bursts of milky blue scale powder, these millions of four-colored small snakes disappeared. At that moment, the halo on the wings of the scourge sky butterfly that was flying in the sky became even dimmer. However, the butchering sky butterfly had already discovered Lin Yuan's arrival. Lin Yuan's arrival made the butchering sky butterfly heave a long sigh of relief. The butchering sky butterfly had not used the nomological world's power to defend until now. It also did not use the nomological world's power to attack the water-drinking snake vulture. Although phase and dimensional lifeforms had roughly the same strength at a certain level, the abilities they used were completely different. The butchering sky butterfly's strength was slightly lower than that of the water-drinking snake vulture. Therefore, after using the power world, the butchering sky butterfly was neither confident in keeping the water-drinking snake vulture nor preventing it from escaping. Once the water-drinking snake vulture escaped, the next time it came, the apostles it believed in would even descend. In that case, the foundation that Lin Yuan had just established in the swamp world would be destroyed. The butchering sky butterfly flew in front of Lin Yuan in a flash and asked him in the main world's language. Lin Yuan, what should I do next? Even if I release the power of the power world and use the exclusive skill, Realm Force Field, that I obtained when I became a creation breed, I can at most suppress the water-drinking snake vulture for a period of time or cause it to inadvertently suffer some minor injuries. Actually, this water-drinking snake vulture must still be hiding something because I feel that there's a power that's comparable to mine hidden under this land. The first one was even more powerful. End of this chapter. Chapter 974. Lin Yuan's pupils constricted, and he subconsciously looked at the ground under his feet. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the water-drinking venom snake vulture issue an arrogant command. Swamp moss, force that sky killer butterfly into the sky. You've done well this time. When I return, I'll ask Lady Ling Long for your reward. No matter how lowly you are, with these two apostles, you will definitely be accepted as a believer by the Lord. They might even become Lord Linglong's loyal subjects. While the drinking venomous snake vulture was speaking, Lin Yuan saw a thick layer of moss growing on the ground in the distance. This layer of moss suddenly appeared on the ground, like a layer of velvet blanket. However, this thick blanket contained an aura that was on par with the slaughtering sky butterfly. At that moment, Lin Yuan opened the treasure artifact made of the treasure cave golden toad's skin and stomach sac. Endless Summer appeared beside Lin Yuan in her human form. After Endless Summer sensed the current situation, she immediately released her first tribulation of creation monarch level aura. This aura directly crushed the swamp water moss that was continuously growing towards them. At the same time, the water-drinking serpent vulture also rushed into the sky, its face filled with ecstasy, as if it would receive a great reward when it returned. After Endless Summer appeared, the gluttonous butterfly immediately recognized her. This made the killer butterfly feel slightly awkward. After all, he had disturbed Endless Summer's advancement as a creation breed and almost caused her to perish in the creation calamity. However, Endless Summer's appearance made the slaughter butterfly heave a sigh of relief. At this moment, the predator butterfly directly released the power of the rule world. As soon as the power of the predator butterfly's law world was released, the water-drinking venom snake vulture flying in the sky immediately revealed a look of surprise. This power doesn't belong to this world. You are invaders from another world. Upon hearing its words, Lin Yuan immediately knew that it should have heard of or seen this power with its own eyes. This meant that the water-drinking venom snake vulture might have seen people entering the swamp world from Class 6-dimensional rifts on other continents. Or could it be that the swamp world understood the swamp world like the main world understood the swamp world? He checked the drinking beat snake vulture's status and found that it did not continue to increase its hostility toward the massacre butterfly after saying that it came from an alternate world. This meant that the water-drinking serpent vultures were not overly averse to people from the origin world. Of course, no matter what, Lin Yuan was prepared to kill this water-drinking venom snake vulture. Based on this drinking blood-sucking snake vulture's talent, poison concentration, Lin Yuan was certain that Wendy could absorb the poison in its heart. Wendy had the same ability as this venomous snake vulture. She could absorb poison and level up quickly. Therefore, the heart of the water-drinking serpent vulture was equivalent to a good medicine for Wendy to quickly increase her strength. Just as he was about to let Endless Summer and the slaughter sky butterfly attack together, Wendy, who was lying on the ground in her snake form, suddenly moved. Then, Wendy turned into a young Medusa and crawled toward him. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan hurriedly picked Wendy up and said softly, "Don't worry. Wendy, don't cry. I will avenge you immediately." When Wendy heard Lin Yuan's comfort, she felt even more aggrieved and cried even more fiercely. The moment Wendy woke up, the swamp water moss, which had been hostile to Lin Yuan and the others, immediately showed obvious kindness to Wendy. Then, the water moss all over the ground bloomed and bloomed into flesh-pink flowers. After the flesh-pink flowers bloomed, several brownish-yellow fruits shot into the sky from the flower cores. These brownish-yellow fruits had extremely strong penetrative power and shot straight at the water-drinking serpent vulture. They caught the water-drinking serpent vulture off guard. A few fruits even shattered the sarcomas attached to the scales on the water-drinking serpent vulture's body. They caused considerable injuries to the water-drinking serpent vulture. The water-drinking serpent vulture was completely stunned by this blow. It took a long time to react before it angrily cursed at the swamp water moss. "You filthy thing, are you crazy? How dare you attack me?" Not only was the water-drinking serpent vulture stunned, but even Endless Summer and the Slaughter Sky Butterfly were also slightly stunned. They did not understand why the water-drinking serpent vulture's allies were having internal strife at this time. When Lin Yuan saw this scene, he immediately smiled. He thought of the second exclusive skill Wild Plant Affinity that Wendy had obtained after going through the perfect source baptism and becoming an apostle. Wild Plant Affinity was extremely attractive to predatory plants. The plants that preyed on her couldn't help but have a good impression of her. However, he felt that this was not the biggest reason for the marsh water moss's rebellion. Swamp water moss was also a type of predator plant that grew in the swamp world, but it was the lowest level of predator plants. It could be said that the swamp world was filled with swamp moss. The swamp water moss was not picky and could grow just by eating the soil in the swamp world. If they were lucky, they might even be able to catch some small bugs. Under normal circumstances, swamp water moss was very weak. Even if it consciously tried to grab some insects living in the swamp, it would not be able to survive. It was also very likely that the insects would break free and even bite the marsh water moss. Swamp water moss was as common in the swamp world as usneas in the main world. Lin Yuan really did not know how the marsh water moss in front of him had grown to class 10. The marsh water moss's seed attack method was also quite impressive. It could actually injure the water-drinking serpent vulture, which was one grade higher than it. Of course, this was also related to the water-drinking serpent vulture's lack of defense. The marsh water moss might be common and ordinary. However, as long as a marsh-dimensional life form grew to class 10, it would have good intelligence. A large part of the reason why the marsh water moss had rebelled was that it was just an ordinary dimensional life form. It was not an apostle's believer. Moreover, based on the meaning of the water-drinking serpent vulture's words, the marsh water moss was not favored by the apostle it believed in. Presumably, this was the reason why the marsh water moss had defected. The marsh water moss should have seen the situation clearly and decided to help Wendy after weighing the combat power of Endless Summer and the Slaughter Butterfly. It might even be accepted as a believer by Wendy. Taking advantage of the water-drinking serpent vulture's stunned state, Endless Summer opened her red lips and shouted. Mind pause. Shooting Spear of Summer. Shooting Spear of Summer. As Endless Summer's voice fell, thousands of pink-purple embroidered ball-shaped flowers appeared in midair and rotated gently. Each embroidered ball-shaped flower brought about a rain of flowers as it rotated. Each rain of flowers condensed into a shooting spear and shot straight at the water-drinking serpent vulture, which was stunned in midair after being hit by Mind Pause. Although Endless Summer seemed to have executed the Mind Stop casually, in the process of executing the Mind Stop, Endless Summer had already opened up the Enlightenment Law world. Second more, end of this chapter. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.